Okay, that took a little bit, but we're good to go now. So, first of all, can everyone hear me? I'm gonna assume everyone can hear me. Yeah, so as Oreo says, no spoiling. Alright, apparently chapter 1045 spoilers are somehow already out. I don't know what's happening these days, but like, I think the last two, three chapters at least we've had. Yeah. Yeah, last two, three chapters we've had like to be fighting spoilers because the spoilers have been coming out, by the start of the week. Hans Ding says, make another Dawn of the World vid. Straw Hat equal Dawn. Yeah, I do think that the Straw Hat can represent the rising sun. We might get some clarity on that, but I don't think I need to make another Dawn of the World video because I think literally everything that I said there still holds up. Yeah, I think actually everything in that video is still much like it's relevant, accurate, holds up to everything that's happening today. I also talked a lot about Sun God Nika stuff and how that applies to modern day stuff in my Skypiea video, so that can connect right off the back of the Dawn video. There's genuinely not that much new there's not that much new that we're getting out of the current reveals, basically, other than I guess a little more confirmation that okay, Luffy literally is the Sun God, etc. But all of that symbolism, established idea, etc., established ideas, uh, thematic significance of his character and what he does. All of that is very well established throughout the story already. So there's not that much new that actually needs to be said. That's why, like, I mean, all right, I mean, it's my stream, so I'm allowed to talk about this shit here, basically. Like, on Twitter, I see random stuff like the new chapter came out, right? I see people posting panels from, like, Blackbeard way back in, I think chapter 440 something or whatever. Like, he's talking to Ace. He's like, what's going to come out on top, the sun or the darkness? And that's posted on Twitter. That panel is like, people are going crazy over it. Like, oh my God, sun or the darkness, the foreshadowing. Like, is this a joke? Like, I've put this in videos for literally years. This is not a brand new panel. Like, this is very, very, very old shit that's been around in the series for a long time. Like, the sun, freedom, etc. Like, this has been the conflict of the story since day one. Like, anybody who's been paying attention or at least watching my videos knows that all of this was like very, very, very strongly foreshadowed and set up for a long, long, long time, right? Like, all of this sun stuff, Luffy, what he represents, all of that, having ended the darkness, etc. This is all very old. So, you know, and maybe that sounds like a little salty, but I'm just like, is this for real? Like, this is not new. This is not new shit. These panels have all been posted many times before in my videos talking about the dawn, sun, etc. This is all old shit. Go watch my Blackbeard analysis. Like, I don't know, a little peeved. Behenort says, when will Kaido flashback happen? At this point, I'm starting to doubt if there will even be a Kaido flashback. Uh, that's the good news, right? Kaido flashback hasn't started yet. Osa says you even touched on it in your Marine Forward video. Yes, like these are like all of these ideas play into one another. So a lot of the same things are going to be interconnected across a lot of different videos. Like the fact that like I saw that panel being posted and it had like 12K likes or something crazy. I'm just like, I've used that panel in like literally four separate analysis videos over like the last, I don't know, like God knows how many years, like 4 or 5 years. This is not a big deal. This should not be new information. This should be very, very clear, definite, like obvious information that if you look at like reread literally any chapter, you'll find more setup for this sun versus darkness shit. Grizzly Adams says, now that Luffy is more explicitly the sun, who will be the moon and why is it Zoro? Sorry, 1 second. I moved past the Kaido flashback thing a little too quickly. Kaido flashback I viewed as good news that Kaido's flashback has not started yet. Supports my agenda. Full video. I'm going to read 1045. Read 1045. Get the gist of that, kind of, because that will tell me a little bit more about, how things are going to progress or whatever. But at least to me, the way everything's looking right now, still looks like a Kaido victory. And the flashback is a part of that. It's a good piece of that, but also several other things. 10:45, maybe that makes me change my mind or something like that, but I gotta see that first. Grizzly Adam says, now that Luffy is more explicitly the sun, who will be the moon and why is it Zoro? Oh god, and now we're getting into all this shit. Some forced shit. I don't want to... Why does it need to... First of all, the moon is not... Maybe people are too obsessed because of that Rayleigh thing that was dropped in the Vivre card, right? The Rayleigh thing. You know, like, if Shanks is the sun, then Rayleigh is the moon. One, Vivre cards, we don't know if they're written by Oda. Two, I don't know, like, if it's referring to some sort of more Japanese sort of saying or something along those lines. But three, like, from what we know in One Piece, the moon is not a good thing. You don't want to be symbolized by the moon. You know who's been symbolized by the moon so far in the story? Blackbeard. And within the Wano arc itself, Orochi, right? So if you're a Zoro fan who's like, I think Zoro's the moon to Luffy's sun, it's like, well, it depends, right? Like, the moon so far in One Piece, it's been, you don't want to be represented by the moon. Maybe if Oda goes the route that, like, you know, Luffy is the moon to Zoro's, Zoro is the moon to Luffy's sun in the sense that Rayleigh is to Shanks, then sure, that's a thing, but so far the moon has been generally used to represent not so good characters. Seamler says, what's your opinion on the idea of Kaido spreading smile fruits as another example of Kaido being a failed Joy Boy? Wait for next Tuesday's video. There's a lot more, I think, with this chapter, and kind of the more we learn about Joy Boy, and the more we can look at Kaido's past a little bit, hints we've gotten about it, I think the more that we can think about what exactly led Kaido where he is right now, and what his motivations are right now. Thomas Cass says, did you see what I tweeted at you? Probably not, because Twitter's just been so active the last few days. Also, Gear 4th equals hybrid. I don't... Oh, so you think that this is... You think that Gear 4th is his hybrid form and that the Nika form is the pure, he's just sun god, basically? Tricky thing about that is that in general, across the board, that's just hasn't really been how Zoan fruits have worked. Obviously, the Goma Goma no Mi or Nika, Hito Hito no Mi model Nika is, like, a little different. It's a special case, but it's also just, like, there's never been a case where the animal form, pure animal form, has been stronger than the original form. Stronger than the hybrid form, right? We all know Kaido's dragon form is his worst fighting form. He was getting fucked up by the scabbards in that form. Like, everybody fucks him up in dragon form. I think his dragon form is generally not that successful, right? We all know that his hybrid form is where it's at. Even just his base form seems generally better than his dragon form. Sure, maybe that's debatable or whatever, but in general, the hybrid form, that's the big form, right? That's the one you want to be in. So I don't think that Gear 4th is hybrid. Daniel Dorner says, you to goat, but what does 1044 mean for hashtag raid fail? Okay, so we're going to get a lot of questions like these. I think, let me read 1045, but to me, more things from this chapter, this is kind of what I was looking for. This is what I was hoping for more so. I think the simplest way I can say it, this is not like a, this is not to make the full argument here or anything like that. I want to do that in video format where I can be more thorough and give all the reasons. But the simplest way I could say it is that the more Oda was writing it like a serious final battle, the more I was like, I don't know about this. Like, I don't know about this. Like, I did think that, Gear 4th Snake Man, that he was going to lose to Kaido for sure. But Oda was writing that with some more seriousness and dramatic tension than had previously been around in the arc, right? Suddenly it was starting to feel like, oh, maybe this is more like, like a Luffy versus Lucci, or Luffy versus Doflamingo, or Luffy versus Crocodile, etc. And then the chapter 1043, when Luffy actually went down, and we finally, for like maybe the second chapter in the entire raid, we had a chapter of dramatic tension in Wano. I was like, there's some dramatic tension Oda's writing here. Like, maybe he is trying to write it to be the finale of the arc. But then it ended right away. So, and switched back to basically the most positive, brimming with confidence, optimistic, excited, happy tone you could possibly imagine with this recent chapter. So that's the basically short version of it, okay? Looking at characters and where characters are at and storylines are at and everything like that, I can give a much more in-depth argument, I think, next week as to why I still think Kaido beats Luffy here. So we'll wait and see. 1045 might make me change my mind, though. Jordan Taylor says, my joke, Mr. Fantastic theory, ended up being closer than the series theories. I don't remember that one. The conclusion I've come to is only joke theories should be taken seriously, like Crocomom or the Fire Festival failing. No, only one of those is a joke theory. Mr. Fantastic theory. I mean, yeah, Luffy's powers are like Mr. Fantastic, basically. Dom says, yeah, sure, Luffy's new power-ups are cool, but is he a quirked up white boy? Does he have a little bit of swagger? Is he busting it down sexual style? Is he goated with the sauce? Moving on, Dom. 8 Gates Production says, when will you come back to the server, please? We miss you. When the raid fails, I'll come back to the server. Ivan back from the card shop says, Gorge, if the raid fails, do you think Big Mom might be the Blue Note of the arc like you thought Jack was? I don't see how we have time for her otherwise. It would be cool to see Big Mom get Blue Note, but I don't even know what people mean like time for her. I don't know what that means. Like, did somebody tell Oda that he's not allowed to have a certain chapter length or something? Thomas Kaz says Sengoku has a mythical Zoan and he uses his full transformation. Yeah, mythical Zoans are interesting because we don't know, like, is the deal that everything, like are all Zoan awakenings similar to Luffy's, where there's, there's just so many questions that this raises because Luffy's awakening is very different from everybody else's awakening, right? And we don't know yet if, like, in terms of what the fruit was before to, like, what it turns into. We don't know, like, you know what I mean? It would be like the equivalent would be right now we know Marco to be the Phoenix Fruit user, right? We know him to be the Phoenix Fruit user. Does that mean before he was awakened, right? Then he was just this mysterious blue fire user, right? He didn't even realize he had the Phoenix Fruit or something like that because he wasn't awakened yet. Because the Goma Goma no Mi, it's such a reduced version of the Nika fruit that the Goma Goma no Mi, it's just like it takes one aspect of what Nika is, which is rubber, and that's the whole ability set, right? And then you get the awakening, and then suddenly you get access to the whole spectrum of what Nika really is. So I don't know if that's just a product of this fruit in particular being special, or if it's like this is just how all Zoan awakenings work and they're just a little different. Where are we at? Data Deficient says Gear 5 gave Luffy rubber hose animation powers. Oh yeah, you're talking about like basically old school, I guess Disney Betty Boop style animation. Behanor just want to say your Discord community is amazing, full of funny, smart, and kind people. Also, lots of gays and communists seem to like you. I don't know what any of this says about me, but the Discord sounds very nice. One day I will return and say hello to everybody. I don't know what it's evolved into. I guess just a hub for gays and communists. Nothing wrong with that. Just that's just what happens when if I leave and then just the whole society grows without me knowing about it. Okay, I think we caught up. Luis Vasquez says, what are some other fruits that could have different names? My money is on Goro Goro no Mi. Enel has a mythical zone mode Raijin. Shoot, see, like, the problem now is, like, we can look at all these fruits and be like, fuck, well, what if this is, like, the Thunder God fruit? What if this is, like, the Earth God fruit or something like that, right? I like to think, for my own sanity at the moment, that this is just a Luffy-specific, Goma Goma no Mi-specific thing, where it's, like, a whole fruit that gets, that's hidden within another fruit, basically. China Woody, thanks. Appreciate it. Wait, Anuj Agarwal called out China Woody. Did you mean to put a question in Super Chat? Yeah, if we see China Woody's question, let's find out what that was. Joel says, so Kaido was a fish until he awakened. Yeah, so some people have been talking about that. Oh, sorry. My thought is maybe. I also think no, though, just because we found out recently what his actual fruit is. So I think for the longest time, I and many believed that Kaido's fruit was, because we found out it was a fish-type fruit, right? We thought it was a fish-type fruit, so we assumed it was like fish fruit model koi or something, and then maybe its awakening is that it turns into a dragon. But we recently found out that no, it's a fish model fruit. It's a fish fruit model dragon. So it's not exactly the same thing, right? Like, it implies that it is just a dragon fruit. It just happens to be it falls under the fish category the same way that like giraffe falls under the cow category, but that doesn't mean that the giraffe fruit is, you're first a cow and then you awaken into a giraffe or something, right? It's just one of those fruits that falls into a separate category of fruit. Same way I think like, don't all the dinosaurs, am I crazy? Dinosaur fruits fall under, all the dinosaur fruits fall under a certain category, right? I might be wrong. I gotta check on the dinosaur fruits. But you know what I mean. Like a lot of the One Piece devil fruits, it's like this fruit, it's like a model of this broader category, but it is still that fruit. So it's not exactly the same thing. There's nothing to imply that Kaido's fruit actually originally made him a fish. Udana Uchegbu says, the fact that Luffy's heart is beating as loudly as his drum means a potential drawback. I mean, that can't be good for you. True, but Luffy is also a rubber man, so his heart can go nuts, and I think it shouldn't bother the rest of his body. One second. Sorry, guys, I'm trying to keep up. Where are we at? Grizzly Adam says, is Blackbeard the moon, or is he the darkest night? Because the moon could be considered the light in the dark, guiding people until the true light of the dawn. Is Blackbeard the moon, or is he the darkest night? Because the moon could be considered the light in the dark. It's like, so far Oda has depicted him, with some moon imagery. Therefore, you could say that, like, if he's the villain, that's what the moon represents, counterpart to the sun. Backing that up is also Orochi, who is characterized by pretty explicitly by Toki as you're like the moon that knows nothing of the dawn, right? So the idea that's been suggested so far is moon equals, you don't want to be the moon. You don't want to get called the moon in the story. Yeah, it could be considered the light in the dark, but that's not really how it's been presented in the story so far. Marmar says, come back to the server and boost it. I see your real intention. I see your real intentions. You just want me to pump up the server's numbers. I see your real intentions. I'll return someday, I swear. I'll return like Joy Boy returning to bring the dawn to Wano. And then that'll end in failure, the same way like it will for Luffy right now. Zaibatsu says, Shanks is a hot topic after the last few chapters. Is he a hot? Oh, yeah, because of the chapter 1 ramifications. People now think he told the government about Luffy's fruit. If he did, why do you think that is? It is actually hilarious that we're now talking about Shanks just potentially being a giant snitch. Wait a second here. Hold on. We have 1,400 people in here. That's amazing. We have 22 likes. 225 likes. I misread that. But still, 225 likes. That's like, if you do the math on that, that's like 225 over 14. That's like 1,400. That's like 1% of you liking the stream. That's crazy. Let's triple those numbers, quadruple those numbers, quintuple those numbers. Whatever comes after that. Werty Yoman says, hey Morge, love your content. Gear 3rd and Gear 4th have always had cartoon logic. Blowing air in your muscles to make you punch stronger, that seems to have been a Nika power all along. Nami will also draw a map from space. See, that's something I don't know about because it's like one of those things, okay, it falls under the category for me of, wait, we got to talk about Shanks first. Hold on. I'm sorry. My apologies. Got to talk about Shanks, right, Zaibatsu? So, briefly talking about Shanks first real quick. Chapter 1, look, I don't think that Shanks, I think it is very, very, very possible that Shanks went to talk to the Gorosei about Luffy. I don't know why. I don't believe that Shanks is a villain. I don't think he has malicious intent. I think it would throw too much of a very pure, important, fundamental piece of the story if the Luffy-Shanks relationship was actually much darker than it initially seemed. Yeah, like, sometimes it's good to subvert things, etc., but, like, I think in One Piece's case, the type of story that this is, what that dynamic is, it's very important to keep that dynamic kind of pure. So I don't know why Shanks went to the Gorosei to snitch. Maybe Shanks foresaw the Gorosei doing the it's a chain of events that did lead to Luffy awakening his fruit, but I doubt that Shanks saw that. So I don't know. There's been controversy, obviously, because of how does this change Shanks' motives when he initially gave Luffy the hat and everything like that, knowing that Luffy had eaten the Nika fruit. I'm just gonna wait and see. This is just a wait and see thing where basically I would not like it if Shanks knew fruit is special chapter 1, therefore Luffy getting it suddenly becomes a big influencing factor in Shanks wanting to give Luffy the hat. I don't think I'd personally like that because we got the sense that Shanks simply saw something in Luffy personally, like his character traits, that made Shanks want to give it to him. But we have to wait and see. Wartio Man says, "Hey Morge, love your content. Gear 3." Okay, so with the Gear 3 and Gear 4, like, are those now basically being not retcon, but like new understanding being that those were Nika abilities? I don't think so, because I think that those are like the One Piece world in general. So many things are justified by cartoon logic, right? Already as is. I really, really think that the Nika-based abilities are purely based on like that happens once the fruit is awakened, and that Luffy did not have access to those abilities before this. Because it's like, yeah, blowing air into, like, that isn't really how it works, but at the same time, like, there's so many other little random fighting styles and, like, quirks in the One Piece world that, like, it would just kind of make sense. I mean, like, look what fucking dinosaurs are doing right now. And we're being told that's just how a dinosaur fights. Thomas Gass says, "My tweet is an idea that the first holder of Tama's Devil Fruit was also the first Poseidon. She awakened the fruit, and it's now able to pass down." That's a great idea. Oh, that's a great idea, Thomas. I will tweet that. I'll retweet that when I see it on Twitter. So just wait till after stream. The pirate here says, "Dislike it if Gear 5 makes him extra happy. Instead of Luffy's own personality being an example to like, it's sort of just saying to get high, lol. Hope the fruit never changed his base. Need to see more, though." No, I don't think. I think Luffy just feels really good right now. He's just filled with, I think it is a lot of his own personality coming out just because he's in a really good, like, he just woke up feeling 100% good. It's kind of like, I guess you could say, this is me making assumptions. We don't know enough yet, just, right? But, like, I'm saying I would like to think that it's not the awakening of the fruit itself makes him, joy boyish or something. Because if you look back at Thriller Bark, towards the end of it, Luffy also went out completely, right? During the Kuma section. When Luffy woke up and he was completely injury-free, because Zoro had taken all of his injuries for him, then Luffy's he's feeling really good. He's jumping around, celebrating, happy, etc. So I think that's nothing crazy there. Yamil Diaz says, "Maybe Caribou has a mud fruit instead of a swamp one. That would be such a game changer." Imagine if Oda leads up to this huge reveal that Caribou is a mud fruit instead of a swamp one. It's just like, everyone's just like, okay. All right, on to the next one. Luis Vasquez says, "How did he get his drums? Did he cut off his wings?" What are you talking about? How did he get his drums? Did he cut off his wings? Oh, Enel? Talking about Enel? Who are we talking about here? We're talking about Enel? Yeah, I don't know. I need some elaboration on that. If you're talking about Enel, then I would say yes. Enel's a weirdo, so he cut off his wings. Juan Pret says, "Dino fruits are dragon. Yeah, which is bizarre that the dragon fruit does not fall under the dragon category, but the the fish fruit does. Or sorry, but the dragon fruit does not fall under the dragon category, right? Dino fruits do fall under the dragon category, but the dragon fruit itself falls under the fish category. It's kind of funny. Okay, I think I'm caught up. No, I'm not. Okay. Mr. Crescent says, "I was pleasantly surprised by how well received this chapter was by the community. I love the chapter, and as you said in your review, I thought it was a very logical power-up for Luffy while being able to subvert expectations." Yeah, I think part of the, one of the bigger things, now that I think about it, is that because I'm part of this community, I guess, right? You see so many theories being thrown around, so many options being thrown around. And, like, you're also trying to think in your head, like, what could it be? And I'm seeing all of these other theories. Not that they're not good, well thought out, well-made theories, but I'm just like, for me personally, I'm like, don't like that. Wouldn't like it if that happened. Luffy the Oil Man, Luffy the Hanuman, Luffy Resin. Not saying those theories were poorly constructed. Good ideas. I'm saying, would I have liked it, right? Like, would I have liked it if this turned out to be the case? I'm just like, no, don't like that. Joy Boy coming back, possessing Luffy's body or some shit. All things I'm just like, I don't like that. This felt perfect for it. Part of the joy of reading this chapter was just how like it's something that nobody else was talking about. As far as I know, I don't remember people really saying it's going to be the Nika fruit. If you called it out there somewhere, congrats. I'm not talking about you. All right. It was not on my radar because I had not heard it or seen it being discussed. Right. So love that it was not something that people were talking about. Right. So it felt like okay, avoided all of those scary dark timelines where suddenly I'm just like, guess Luffy's is a fucking I don't know like. Mudman or something. God knows what some people are throwing out there, right? Avoided all those dark timelines. Instead, we got the Nika fruit. Different, creative, interesting. Seems really well set up, right? And second, the power set, etc. Really, really love that. Everything feels right. You'll get a full, more articulate understanding of why I really love what the fruit is in tomorrow's coming video. But a huge part of it was just like avoiding all of the other options that I didn't personally like. Again, not because any theories were bad. I thought there were a lot of great theories out there, but just a personal preference, right? Thomas David says, dislike the fruit change because I don't want Luffy to be a god. Ruins the underdog story. Same thing happened in Naruto and it sucked. Can't see how this is any different. Thoughts? Here is my take on why it's different, okay? I think here's the big difference, right? If you took out all of the Gorosei's text this chapter, take out everything that the Gorosei say, right? So pretend we don't find out it's this Nika fruit. Pretend we don't find out it's the sun god thing. Pretend like everything that they're saying is out the window. Okay. So just pretend you're reading it like it's the Goma Goma no Mi's awakening. Okay. And we didn't learn that this is a special fruit, sun god, etc. If you read this chapter and looked at Luffy's abilities, it's not that broken. It's really not a broken fruit. It's a pretty straight. Like, it's a strong ability because it's attached to Luffy. He's also a very, 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 very strong character. Like, Luffy before this chapter, was about even with Kaido, the supposed world's strongest creature, right? So, the stuff we're seeing from Luffy, what he's able to do, it's like, okay, he's able to stretch and change his body more freely, and he's able to turn the environment into rubber. Most people already fucking guessed that he'd be able to turn the environment into rubber. Being able to stretch and change his body freely, that's like a really strong ability. Yeah, but like, do you understand what I'm saying when I say that, like, if Oda had simply told us that, yeah, this is just the Goma Goma no Mi's awakening, if he hadn't dropped this other stuff, like, it's a special fruit and there's this lore behind it, and it's the sun god awakening, right? If Oda had just written it as like, oh, this is the Goma Goma no Mi's awakening, we'd be like, oh, this is sick, this is really cool. Obviously, it's not broken like the Goro Goro no Mi or like Blackbeard's fruit or even as strong as like a dragon fruit or something. It's more so that Oda dropped in this special lore to make it sound more special that has people being like, well, now Luffy's a sun god. It's like, go back one chapter. Without any of this, Luffy was still toe-to-toe with Kaido. With this, yeah, it's really strong, but it's also just like, just because it has the name sun god attached to it, the fruit itself, it's like, yeah, it's a solid awakening. You know, like Luffy can do way more with rubber now, but it's not like Luffy's getting literal like sun god powers. It's not like he can summon the sun. I think Oda basically, like, by going the route of saying, hey, this is a special fruit, it's the sun god fruit, etc., and throwing these titles into it, suddenly like a lot of readers are going to be like you said, I'm not trying to dismiss what you're saying, but like suddenly it adds that connotation, I guess, of like, or like that imagery of just like, oh my god, he's a sun god now, he's so powerful. But it's like, what is the what is the fruit actually, right? Like, if you crossed out the word sun god and did away with the idea that it's Nika fruit, it's a special fruit, etc. If we were just told it's the Goma Goma no Mi's awakening, then we'd all just be like, oh yeah, cool, Goma Goma no Mi's awakening, right? What I'm trying to say here is that basically the fruit's not broken, right? It's not a broken fruit. It's the most ridiculous power in the world, but it doesn't seem like a broken fruit. This just seems kind of like what you would expect from the rubber fruit's awakening. That's basically all I have to say. Like, I think nobody would be saying that this ruins anything if Oda had not changed the name to Sun God Fruit. If this was just Goma Goma no Mi and we saw this style of awakening and we're just like, cool, Luffy can stretch more freely and he can change the environment into rubber, seems like very reasonable for what his fruit's awakening would be, I think most people would just not have a single problem with it. So, that's my take on it. Don't know if people agree with that, but you know what I mean? Like, it's not like Whitebeard's fruit, which can supposedly destroy the world and it can clearly like flip islands on its head and shit like that. And again, like Luffy 1 chapter ago was going even with Kaido. This is about the natural bump you would expect if Luffy were to have awakened his fruit, right? Justin Holland says, Luffy has only been using a fraction of his true power to make it this far till now. More cred on Luffy. again, something I talk about in tomorrow's video to a degree. So definitely look out for tomorrow's video. I think it's a good video. Obviously, I'm going to hype up my own videos, but I think it's a good video. Groovy Zeno says, what if Shanks wanted to give Ace the Devil Fruit? Since Roger believed his son would find the One Piece, but since the Zoan fruits have their own will, it drew Luffy in. So, I have an idea, alright? Shit. There's a video I want to do for next week, but there's a video I want to do past that. So I guess I'm saving that video for the break week. But there's a few ideas at play here that I kind of just have to save my thoughts on in terms of why Shanks wanted to do what he wanted to do. But there's a lot that seems to be kind of coming together there. The problem is that Shanks would have, in that case, known how special the Gomu Gomu no Mi is. And, like, that does change how Shanks views, Luffy, essentially. Russ the Kid says, and, like, why he gave Luffy the hat. Russ the Kid says, why do you like the Gear 5th and Mythical Zone switch so much? I just feel like we need to see more to be really blown away. Again, okay, so the Zoan fruit, funnily enough, Luffy having a Zoan fruit is the weirdest thing to me about all this. That's the weirdest thing because in my mind, Luffy is a Paramecia type. That's just what he is. He's a Paramecia type. That's him, right? I just gotten used to him as a Paramecia type. So it's weird to me, but it's not as fundamental as changing that he's rubber. As long as he's still rubber, I'm cool with it. And I think the big thing, I guess basically the big thing that I can say is that I feel like this was decently set up somewhat. It's hard to say because it does arguably lead to plot holes in terms of who knew about the Gomu Gomu no Mi, etc. I'm going to ignore the plot hole part of it. I'm going to say that clearly from the way Oda dropped hints and stuff, he had been thinking about it. Maybe Oda didn't think about some plot holes that it created. We have to wait and see if those exist or not. But I do think that Oda had been thinking about it for a long time. It feels like a very natural evolution of Luffy's abilities rather than something like crazy and like busted, like if he was suddenly having actual like sun god powers or something along those lines. And most everything I'm just going to say is basically saved for tomorrow's video. I guess like it feels like an organic evolution. That's the closest thing that I can say. It feels like Luffy coming into his own in terms of like who he was always going to finally be able to become, right? Like it feels like we're seeing like the final version of Luffy, and it feels very true to who he is. Demon says, thoughts on Kaido awakening being the reason why he can't die. It could explain why Kaido has been defeated before but never died. That is possible. I mean, like we've seen hints that basically the first hint that we kind of got was that, okay, the only thing that can even fucking hurt him is Conqueror's Haki, advanced Conqueror's Haki. That was why Oda made such a big deal of like the scabbards, they're using advanced armament Haki, doesn't do anything to him. Suddenly, finally, Luffy and Zoro, they're able to use advanced Conqueror's Haki, and that's the first thing that can really affect him. So that seemed to be the implication and what people took as canon after chapter 1010. Made sense, Odin was the only other person to scar him, etc., right? And the number of the people in the world that can actually use advanced Conqueror's Haki is very, very slim. So executing Kaido becomes very difficult off of that. So I don't know if it's necessarily related to his, his fruit, and rather just his own. I mean, his fruit, his dragon skills make him tough, but I don't know if it's related to him awakening his fruit is what I mean. Pete Garcia says, in chapter 1, the Oda boxes started off black, but switched and stayed white as soon as Luffy ate the Gomu Gomu no Mi. Coincidence? Nika narrator. That is a crazy idea. I would say coincidence at the moment, but that is a crazy idea. I would never have thought of that. Never would have thought of that. That's a really cool idea. Thomas Cass says, bro, I forgot Caribou was in this arc. Yeah, I think most everybody did. Hold up. This is gonna be a pretty crazy stream, it looks like. I think I gotta open up the other super chats tab. All right, so Tofi2000 says, do you think One Piece will have a really big plot twist which will turn the story upside down? Love the new powers, the design, but not the fact that he changed Luffy's fruit to a mythical zone. So, I mean, I'm actually on board, as I just said, that I don't know about. I don't love the mythical zone aspect of it, you know? I don't love that it's a zone. But that's a minor thing. In the broad scheme of things that could have gone terribly, I don't want to say bad, but like, that would have bothered me a lot more about Luffy's, fruit changing. Switching from Paramecia to Zoan is probably the most minor thing in the world. I love that the actual fruit, it's like a true evolution of what Luffy's fruit already felt like it was. You know what I mean? And it feels so right for Luffy. Like, this fighting style feels right for Luffy. Toby Burris says Kaido, Blackbeard's, and Big Mom's fruits are special. Nobody uses that against them as characters. So why does it matter for Luffy? Stop comparing Luffy to Roger. You should not have brought Roger up in that statement, because it just reminded me right off the bat. I was just like I would have actually just been right there with you. Like, well, I mean, I think the big thing is that, like, look, for the bad guys, here's a big part of it, okay? One Piece, it has a really cool power system, right? But it's a little different from other stories' power systems in that One Piece, like most other stories, you got Hunter x Hunter, JoJo's, etc., right? The power that you have, it's inherent to you, right? So it's a manifestation of you, right? In One Piece, it's a little different because it's just shit that you come across and eat, right? So you get fuckers like NL who are not that strong, who can act like they're basically omnipotent, etc., because they've been granted a power that's not really, it has nothing to do with them, right? It's pure chance that they have that power, right? So it's devil fruits basically inherently, inherently, like, you know that a devil fruit user, the special power that they have, it doesn't reflect them. That's why Oda is so good in general in making it so that, like, really strong characters with really strong devil fruits, such as admirals, yonkos, etc., they have the actual fighting ability to back up and make it feel right that they have such a strong devil fruit ability, right? So it tends to match up just organically, right? But part of the fun of Luffy was that he'd gotten a power, but it was not inherently a very, very strong power. It's not like NL or something like that, right? So the fun was that it felt like, yeah, Luffy's got this power that gives him some variety to his fighting style, but for the most part, he himself has to get stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger, right? So I can understand why some people feel like people are generally going to be naturally more okay with the idea that, yeah, the villain has a broken ability, right? And sure, they just happen upon that ability. They happen to eat that fruit. But it's the villain, right? You don't care too much how the villain got their power. You care about how the hero rises to match that power, right? So that's why a lot of people instinctively are not going to be cool with the idea that Luffy had a really powerful fruit all along, because so far we've been getting to enjoy seeing Luffy have a fruit that has been called out over and over as being not a good fruit. The Gomu Gomu no Mi was referred to as not that strong of a fruit in the grand scheme of things for a long time. So a lot of the fun was seeing Luffy through haki, just through both haki, training up his haki, getting his physical fighting and everything like that up, and also just pushing a fruit that's supposedly not that strong to be so much more effective than you would intuitively think it could be. So that is where a lot of the fun came for a lot of readers of, like, enjoying Luffy, who's just a Gomu Gomu no Mi user, right? So I don't think it's fair to compare him to villains. And Roger, basically, the fact that you brought Roger up throws that off even more, in that it's like, fuck, Roger was stronger than all of these guys. All of these guys. I would take Roger right now over Luffy, by the way, still. Roger was stronger than all of those Yonko, at least, without having a fruit, as far as we know, which is crazy and more impressive than getting there while having a fruit. It's just true. It's just more impressive to do that than get there while having a fruit. All that being said, I think Luffy still had to do 90% of it without having that strong of a fruit. And his fruit isn't that strong. People are going crazy with how strong it is. His fruit is pretty much exactly what you would expect the Gomu Gomu no Mi's awakening to be anyway. I think people are getting too caught up in the title Sun God. Sun God is a cool title, but he's not fucking summoning the sun or anything like that. He's still just rubber. He's able to use rubber better than before. That's all his ability is. And he's able to, like, kind of add some cartoonish reality stretching stuff a little bit, but it doesn't really seem to be changed. Like, it's not like the fact that his eyes are popping out doesn't add to his combat ability, right? So you guys get what I'm saying? Like, if Luffy genuinely did have, like, a sun god fruit, and Luffy could summon the fucking sun or some crazy shit like that, then I'd be like, yeah, I think this is terrible. But no, it's a sun god fruit. In terms of what the sun represents in the story, the sun represents freedom. Therefore, it makes sense that this would be, the moniker would be the sun god fruit, right? Like, the sun in the story means freedom more than actually, like, literally summoning fire or whatever. So to me, in that sense, it's like, yeah, Luffy has a very free-flowing fruit. That's all it really means. It's a free-flowing, free-willed, free-spirited, ridiculous power, but it's not like a broken power. It's broken because Luffy's really strong. You take away Luffy's strength, and it's just like it's just Mr. Fantastic, which isn't that strong. Where were we at? Gun Varel says, sorry, catching up. Gunvarrow says, so Luffy's fruit is special after all, but at least awakening it seems special. How often do you think it happened before? Maybe first since the Void Century. I would think first since the Void Century, if Zanisha is to be believed. And look, Zanisha is just a dumb elephant, but we're supposed to believe him, so I'll take him at his word. Udana Uchegbu says, it looks like Luffy's haki has been further magnified upon awakening due to the fact that the fruit is supposed to give him more freedom/free will. This explains why he could exude waves of Conqueror's haki. I don't know. I think it also might just be like Luffy's waking up refreshed. His spirit is like full. It's like a cleanse, right? Like a full cleanse. So he's just feeling really good right now. He's feeling on top of the world. The monologue he gives at the beginning of the chapter, he's just feeling really, really good. So his haki might just reflect that. I don't think the fruit boosts his haki. Gigatronma says, do you think Blackbeard will steal Luffy's fruit to become a false bringer of the dawn? Holy shit. Whoa. Did you guys read that? Did you guys read that? What? What? Are you guys reading this? What an idea. Gigatronma. Tweet that at me and I'll retweet it. I love that idea. That is an amazing idea. Tweet that at me and I'll retweet it. Shiny Charizard says, what do you think if it was Katarina Devon was posing as Shanks where he's talking to the Gorosei? Could be a Blackbeard play to take Luffy out. Why are there so many good ideas coming out right now? What is this shit? This is brilliant. Great ideas. Also, all Blackbeard related. That would be a great idea. It would be a great idea. Depends on haki and stuff like that, people's ability to sense haki, but like, as far as we know, the Gorosei aren't necessarily experts at that, and plus, like, I'm sure top-tier characters can, like, lower their haki if they want, so maybe Shanks is just being low-key. I mean, Katarina, they would assume Shanks is being low-key if he didn't have his haki up or whatever. I mean, he was trying to show up in secret. Milo Cake says, Elders met Shanks and Imu. Questions, Q's is what each said. It's all up in the air right now. We know that Imu did not pick out Luffy as a light to be extinguished. It looks like he picked Vivi. So whatever Shanks told the elders may not have influenced Imu's decision at all. I mean, they went to... I mean, those were two separate meetings, right? And then Imu's meeting happened after Shanks, etc. So, like, I think it's possible that maybe even Imu had selected Vivi, right? Elders then inform him about what Shanks told him, and then maybe Imu's thinking about Luffy instead. We don't know. G4162 says, interesting you think Kaido beats Gear 5th, but it makes sense. People forget Gear 4th started just above Doflamingo level and ended up being able to hurt Kaido. Gear 5th will have similar progression. This isn't the max. Yeah, I don't think that, I mean, like, we just saw Gear 5th. Like, this is the first time Gear 5th is being broken out. There's definitely more that Luffy's going to be able to do with it over time. Gabe C says, who cares about One Piece? Talk about Oscar Slap. No, that shit's so boring. It's like, it was funny that it happened, but then after a bit, it's just like, how much is there even to talk about that? Ramon Avila says, it's good to see a power born from joy and happiness, which fits Luffy to a T, rather than a final form from anger and despair. That is a very, very good point, because that is what you normally see. I mean, like, I don't want to say Super Saiyan transformation is bad. Super Saiyan transformation is probably the most iconic and important shonen transformation. Anything transformation in the history of fiction, it's probably Super Saiyan. But this is a good spin on it, right? It's a little different. All right, I think I'm caught up with the ones I was missing before. All right, let's get going. Toby Bura says, no, we covered you. GK says, I would love to see Usopp fight Rob Lucci to protect Luffy after his fight against Kaido. I don't think we get a post-Luffy-Kaido fight because, like, in arcs like this, like, Oda just likes concluding with Luffy. Like, Luffy beating the big villain, that's the end, right? That's the final note in the crescendo of the symphony or whatever, right? That's usually just important to, like, the flow of One Piece arcs. Thriller Bark, you could say, is the one exception, and even then, like, the fight wasn't really a fight, right? Like, it was just a cool little dramatic sequence that happened at the end of the arc, and there it was necessary because Thriller Bark as a whole was not a particularly, like, important. It was a fun arc, it was a funny arc, it had its drama and stuff like that, but, like, Thriller Bark really needed that final Kuma section to give it an edge and something that's memorable and powerful and iconic, right? Wano shouldn't really need that. Thomas David says, I would like to add, yes, I'm totally okay with the power set. It is specifically the fact that it is a god fruit. I don't see why that changed necessary. Anyways, love your stuff, man. Thanks, Thomas. I appreciate it. Yeah, I think the sun god thing, it's gonna... I just don't think it's right to call it a broken fruit because of the title. The sun, it refers to freedom in this sense, right? it's like Oda went for the hype here when he's calling it the sun god ability. But if he'd called it, he could have called it anything else, and people would have been cool with what's happening. He could have been like the sun spirit fruit, or like the freedom spirit fruit, or something. Like he could have made it's a mythical creature, right? Nika. Oda could have made up anything and been like, oh, there's like this fucking friendly sprite that travels the world back in the day that brought joy and happiness to others, right? It's the freedom sprite or something, or the sun sprite or something, like or like an elf or some shit. Like there's this magical little elf that traveled the world, right? And then he could have been like, yeah, that's the Nika fruit, and people would have been totally like, nobody's gonna be calling these abilities. The abilities that we're seeing are just pretty much what you would roughly expect from the Goma Goma Ni's awakening, right? You can use rubber more freely. You can change your environment into rubber. That's totally reasonable. So if it was revealed like, hey, it's actually this fucking elf thing, and this elf can do this shit, people would be totally like, yeah, sounds good. It's because Oda used the word sun god that people are going crazy about. It's like, well, it's a god fruit. It's like, this is not a fucking like. This is so fucking reasonable. This is just what you would kind of expect Luffy's awakening to be. I've said this like a million times so far in this stream, but I think the naming of it, Oda went for hype in the naming of it, but I guess he opened himself up to criticism that, oh, it's an OP fruit because it's got that name now, right? Whereas if it was not named that, and I think Oda toned down a little bit the lore behind it and its specialness, I think people would not be having any issues with it. Anime Dimension says, Part 1 Dressrosa, Luffy wears a sunflower, which refers to Nika, which is Nika in Japanese, which is short for... Also, his name is Lucy, which is short for Lucifer/Devil, which connects to Ors. That's actually really interesting. I did not know that about Lucy. Bweezy Bird says, mythical equals myth equals the sun god. Myth gave people hope. Yeah, I think along those lines makes sense. Mythical Zoan fits with that. James Halder says, does anyone not feel some type of way about the idea that Rand Luffy has been a warrior of freedom because of his fruit and not his own personality and will? I don't think it's because of the fruit. I think that is just what Luffy naturally was early on. And I think it's just one of those things where, like, it's a quirk of fate, right? That these two things, like, I like to think that Luffy is just so perfectly, like, he wasn't born with that fruit, right? Luffy, as a kid, right, was just organically the type of person that the fruit would naturally be drawn to. Because as we heard, the fruits have a will of their own, right? So if the fruit realizes that I want to be drawn to Luffy, this is the kid for me. That sounds weird, but that's what the fruit said. The fruit was like, this is the kid for me. I want to be in this kid. That's what that fruit said. Not trying to make up some weird stuff, but that's just what the fruit said. And so then the fruit went and got eaten by Luffy. I think that that's perfectly fine. Anime Dimension says, Part 2, Ors used awakening to become small... Ors used awakening to become smaller. That explains his smaller straw hat in Marijoa compared to Ors' original size. I don't know if that's Ors' hat, though, but I get the idea that you're going with, which is that, like, yeah, maybe Joy Boy was just a big dude because he could change his size freely. Isopod says, last 3 to 4 pages of 297 hit way different now. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to assume that 297, so that's basically like, is the flashback essentially rapping right there? Is the flashback rapping right there, or is Luffy still fighting? Or is Luffy fighting Enel? But everything about the end of Skypiea hits like a lot harder now. Alexa Denovich says, "Do you think the Red Hawk is part of Nika's powers?" No, I don't think so. There's nothing about Nika right now that implies like fire. I mean, he's called the Sun God, but I'm saying that nothing he's done so far, ability-wise, is fire related. Fire related. L. Goodwin says Zunisha just happens to have the Minks here to witness their god Nika. What are your thoughts on Carrot and Jinbei's reactions to this? And do you think Garp or Sword know of Nika? If the Straw Hat sensed Luffy, so will the Minks. The Minks here to witness their god Nika. Thoughts on Carrot's and Jinbei's reactions? I mean, I don't know how deeply ingrained the Nika lore is with these other races. I mean, Jinbei seemed like he was hearing about it for the... I mean, for Jinbei, it'll be kind of odd because he's like, fuck, like 20 minutes ago, Who's Who was telling me about this Who's Who. For Jinbei, it's like the randomest shit. It's like, imagine you're in the middle of this fight and this guy starts spewing this random bullshit about like this sun god that he's heard of and all this stuff, and you're just like, what the fuck are you talking? And you just beat him up, right? And then 20 minutes later, you see Luffy, your captain, just transforming into a reincarnation of the same bullshit that Who's Who was talking about like a second ago. That'd be kind of weird. That'd be bizarre. That'd just be like, what are the chances? What are the chances? Like, I swore that guy was crazy when I fought him like, 10 chapters back. Keenan says, at the end of the day, can't give our opinions until we get more info. As it stands right now, if Luffy's fruit is a Zoan, then it's the only Zoan fruit, including mythical ones, where the user can't turn off the transformation. I mean, I would think he can turn off the transformation. I don't think he's just like this forever, right? I would think that Luffy can turn back. Thomas Kaz says, imagine if Luffy ate a Rumble Ball. Also, Chew is S tier. The Chew fight is S tier. I don't know about that, man. Luffy eating a Rumble Ball. Yeah, this changes so much because at first I was like, why doesn't Chopper try giving the Rumble Ball to like other Zoan users and stuff? But now it's just like, man, if Chopper ever gave Luffy a Rumble Ball, then like like everybody's done. There's no way. Like look at what he's doing to Kaido right now. Luffy with a Rumble Ball would just be it's unstoppable, right? Supreme Pirate King says Luffy's ultimate attack is going to be a Red Hawk variant of the Will Smith slap. We're still talking about this shit? Who cares? 8 Gates Production says, I think more people are annoyed with the gravitas given to Gear 5 than just treating it plainly as Gear 5. Because people want to relate to Luffy. Yeah, I mean, I get, like, Luffy's story, and I've talked about this, right? In my video on Destiny, I talked a lot about how, like, so much about what we've liked about Luffy is that he's making his own path, doing it through his own will, right? The idea that he had a very special fruit all along. To me, there's a difference between the fruit being special. I think that's just it. I think there's a difference to me between the fruit being special versus, which it certainly is, versus it being like the strongest fruit in the world or something. It's a strong fruit, obviously, in its awakened form. It's a strong fruit. But to me, at least the way the Gorosei were talking about it, it's kind of the uniqueness of the fruit that stands out, right? Like, it likely was Joy Boy's fruit. We can almost safely assume that now. It likely was Joy Boy's fruit, so it has that significance. It has a very free-spirited will, so the Gorosei weren't able to keep it. They can't keep their hands on it, right? It's the most ridiculous power in the world. They don't like what it represents. It represents freedom. Those things, like, I get that. I feel like, how do I say this? I feel like everything, like Luffy ate that fruit, and then everything he did for the first 90% of the story, right? The first 1,000 chapters was basically proving that he is worthy of that fruit. He's the most freedom-embodying individual out there, strong-willed, brings smiles to everybody, etc. And he represents what the fruit represents really well. And so then finally, when it's revealed that he just has, like in his final form or whatever, he can access the fruit's abilities and just go all out in terms of a free-flowing fighting style, free-spirited, ridiculous, comical fighting style. I don't know, like, it feels like I don't think it takes that much away from Luffy is what I'm getting at, basically, because the fruit is not a broken fruit. It's just a fruit that represents him really well, and he spends so much of the series kind of basically, like, showing that, yeah, obviously, if anybody in the world represents what this fruit represents, it's him. And therefore, when it's revealed that his fruit is more than we previously imagined, I think it feels okay to me. I get the idea that I also like the idea that Luffy did not have a strong advantage coming up, but he didn't, right? I like the idea that, like, Luffy still feels relatable in a sense to me, and that, like, his journey so far has been mostly made out of willpower, pushing himself, etc. And I don't think the fruit is that strong relative to other fruits. I think it's just a special fruit, but it symbolically fits Luffy. First name, last name says, why do you think Oda doesn't address the morality of Tama's fruit brainwashing people? Because maybe he does down the line, but I don't think it needs to be addressed. Like, some things just, like, they're only a problem if you really say they're a problem. Like, it's when it's being portrayed comically in the series, then it's not really the author trying to paint it as a problem. So maybe Oda doesn't connect and realize that, hey, maybe brainwashing is bad or whatever. But, like, it's like one of those things like, yeah, Garp, like, abused Luffy and Ace and Sabo when they were children. But it's played for laughs, so it's not like Oda's going to address that in the fucking story. You know what I mean? Like, Flip side is something like it's like, yeah, technically it's child abuse. Technically, what Nami does to Luffy is abuse. It's just like if it's played for a gag, then it falls into a different category, right? Flip side would be something like, hey, when Yasop left Usopp and his mother to die, um, that was clearly very emotional and like Usopp has pride in his father, but the whole fallout from his father leaving and not being there, that was clearly very sad and I wouldn't say traumatizing or whatever for Usopp, but it was a tragic part of Usopp's life, right? Like that was his backstory, right? Like waiting on their father to return. So if Oda wants to go and be like, yeah, Usopp does have something to settle with his father, or there is something pent up there that needs to be addressed about his father abandoning him, then that would make a lot of sense. But if it's something that's being played for gags, then I don't think Oda suddenly has a responsibility to address moral repercussions of it because he's not really framing it that way in the story. G4162 says, since the 25th anniversary is approaching, who do we see fight seriously in the next 25 years first? In the next 25 years, Shanks, Dragon, or Garp? That is a great question. Who do we first see fight seriously? I'm going to say Shanks. Shanks feels a little closer around the corner than the other two. Jerry Goldman, thanks, I appreciate it. Isopod says, I'm almost positive now the Yami Yami no Mi is something else. It's as much of a light outlier among Logias as Luffy's was with other Paramecias. I don't think Luffy's was an outlier with Paramecias for the longest time. Luffy's felt like textbook Paramecia for the longest time. But yeah, maybe Yami Yami no Mi, I feel like doesn't need to be something else. It's so strong as is. Udana at Checkboost says, how do you feel about Luffy's new look? I love Luffy's new look. I think it's great. Definitely like it. People don't remember. A lot of people were not on board with Gear 4th's look when it first came out. I don't know how people feel about it now. Like, I'm very accustomed to Gear 4th now. I think it's cool. Looks cool. Like the different forms of it. Snake Man, I think, is a little cooler than Bound Man. But across the board, I think I like Gear 4th. All right. I was a little iffy on Gear 4th at first. I didn't love it or hate it. It was just like, this is different. This is a different look. That's for sure. A lot of people were not loving Gear 4th right off the bat. It took some time. This one, I think pretty much everybody's on board right away. I think this one looks really, really cool. Sam Fowler says, do you think Blackbeard's Yami Yami no Mi is a god fruit? So we're getting a couple questions on this. Yami Yami no Mi lacks intangibility and okay, so very similar. I'm going to say no. I think Yami Yami no Mi, because it's like such a famous fruit as is. You know what I mean? Like Blackbeard sought it out specifically because he's like, it's said to be the strongest fruit or something along those lines. I don't think it needs to be anything more than it already is. It's busted as is, right? Like it beats every other fruit. Stephen Bracano says, how does Gear 5 mix with the Conqueror's Haki theme? Wasn't that supposed to be the deciding factor? Yes, and I think Conqueror's Haki is still going to be more important at the end of the day. But it's going to, like, the next few, I'd say especially the next chapter is going to shape how I see the rest of this fight going. Like, the tone that's established going out of this or whatever. The Conqueror's Haki, it is interesting that at this moment in time, that's not being focused on as much when, like, thematically with the arc, that makes so much sense as, like, the final thing to take out Kaido. Keenan says, people think it's a broken fruit now because they're misinterpreting it as Toon Force powers, when in reality it's, as you said, standard awakening abilities for the rubber fruit, turning surroundings rubber, more flexible. Yeah, that's all I'm saying. I think if people, replace all the lore that we learned, pretend whose speech never happened, pretend the Gorosei speech never happened, pretend we never found out it's the Nika fruit, pretend we just found out that, this is Luffy's rubber awakening, right? This is what the Goma Goma no Mi awakening looks like. Literally nobody would think that this is surprising or out of the norm. We think it's really cool, but it also just seems pretty naturally, organically along the lines of what we'd expect from a rubber evolution. Jerry Coleman, thanks again. I get the sense you're trying to say something, but you haven't figured out the super chat system yet. Maybe just type it in chat and someone will get it over to me. Milo Cake says, imagine if a Skypian eats Enel's fruit now. They'd call it a god Enel fruit. Do you think that's similar to what happened with the sun god fruit? Oh, so you think that there was someone named Nika who, did some stuff and then people, the fruit from then on was called the god Nika fruit. I think that we don't know enough about how devil fruit naming works for us to say something like that. I think if it's called a mythical Zoan, I think we would expect it to actually be a mythical, based off a mythical creature. Ray Del Ninja says, can't believe Morge thinks the fruit is a pedo. Hey, I didn't say it. You guys said it. All I know is that the Goma Goma no Mi has a will of its own. It saw young Luffy and was like, this seems right for me. This is kind of crazy. 2,500 viewers. I wonder if we can get to 3K. Let's get to 1,000 likes first. Hold on, this stream is this stream is quite a bit. This stream is quite a bit, guys. Hold on. I'm doing my best. Tofi 2000 says, I get that the fruit doesn't really have how much it, wait, one sec. One sec. What is this? Okay, never mind. I get that the fruit doesn't really have anything more special in terms of in-world power, but I still think it wasn't necessary to double down on this theme in this way. I agree in that it wasn't. We can all acknowledge none of this was necessary. Oda didn't have to write any of this. We all should have been getting, up to this point of the story, the idea that Luffy is the guy who'll bring the dawn. Luffy represents the sun. He has represented the sun throughout the entire fucking series. Still pisses me off that people on Twitter seem to think that this is completely new. Jesus Christ, the fact that panel of Blackbeard saying the sun or the darkness, which will win, and people going absolutely crazy over that. I'm like, is this a joke? This is like so fucking old. How many videos have I used that panel before now to explain everything about the like? Sorry, I'm just never not going to be annoyed by that, by the fact that like, if I talk about some shit way earlier, in depth, multiple times over many analysis videos, and then finally it clicks for some people who have not seen those videos, then they're going to spread it around like it's basically like the greatest revelation in the world. So many realizations that people are having right now. Fucking go watch Dawn of One Piece video, go watch Skypiea video, go watch the Blackbeard analysis video, go watch the Marineford video. It will cover every single thing that you've seen on Twitter spread around, or I'm sure on the One Piece Reddit spread around in the last 1 week. And that is not an exaggeration. I genuinely believe that there's not a single unique original thing that I've seen come out that has not been mentioned at length, in depth, in one of those 4 videos. Sorry if that comes across as like a certain type of way, but that is genuinely how I feel right now. Let's focus back on this. It wasn't necessary for him to double down on this theme in this way. I agree. It's just like, it's cool. You know what? It's like one of those things where like Oda's clearly set it up for a long time. He weighed the cool factor, like the hype factor of having all of this come together for this sort of a reveal. It definitely made the Gear 5th reveal and awakening more memorable and iconic than it would have been if this was still just a rubber fruit with none of the extra, Joy Boy has returned, the drumming and all that stuff, like the lore-based significance of being added to it does add those extra layers of, it's just going to be a more memorable, iconic moment, right? Oda didn't need to do any of this, that's true. So it's one of those things where it's basically like, if he didn't add all of this extra layers of lore, etc., right? Sun God hype, right? It would feel like there's no criticisms you could level at it, right? You couldn't be like, hey, plot hole, why didn't the Gorosei fucking talk about this shit earlier, right? Why was this just a Goma Goma no Mi? Like, we don't like Luffy being the sun god. It feels wrong that he's the god now, right? Like, it would shield One Piece from a lot of criticisms, but it also wouldn't be as hype, right? So it's a bit of a, it's a bit of a balancing act right there. It depends which side you kind of want to fall on. I think I was personally so relieved that it wasn't any of the other options being thrown out for what the fruit could be that I was loving it. And it's just cool, like, my inner One Piece fan was just loving seeing Luffy fighting like that. It felt so true, so right to him. Neil Smith says, Oda planning the Sun God reveal at Wano makes a lot of sense, with Japan being the land of the rising sun. Great point. I think this stream has had a ton of great points. No matter what, like, as much as I talk up, like, oh, I've said this in my videos before, this in my videos before, right? In streams, very, very often, people come up with, like, some absolute gold that I'd never thought of. Like, that's a great idea. People have pointed out things throughout the stream that I'd definitely not thought of. Gun Varel says the D clan is the natural enemy of the gods, yet Luffy has become one himself. Is it the thing of good slash bad, good versus bad, real slash fake gods? What are the themes here? My opinion, because that is something that's been brought up basically ever since the idea that Luffy is a god, right? Is that like the type of Luffy represents a different type of god, right? Like a sort of he re- you could say that there's different types of gods in the One Piece world, right? But like when Luffy turns the sky sunny in Skypiea, right? Ends the Raigo, turns the sky sunny. He literally says, "Turn sunny now." Right before that, everyone is praying for a god to come save them, and then Luffy literally comes, bringing the sun with him, right? So in that sense, Oda's kind of always depicted Luffy as a god. Like you could say he's the embodiment of freedom, and that is a god in itself, right? But it's not the type of god that like the celestial dragons, Doflamingo, Emu, etc. represent, which is gods who are about control. Same with like Enel, right? Controlling everybody's reality, making them obey oppression, etc. Right? So it's like I don't want to say true versus false gods. That might be simplifying it a little bit, but like what a god can mean. So like the fall of the traditional gods, right? So those who are controlling, oppressive, celestial dragons, etc., versus like brought down by like a god that brings freedom, etc. So it's a little bit different, but I don't think Luffy's a god in that sense, right? He's never going to rule over anything, right? He's more so the embodiment of freedom as a concept that's always been represented by the sun. You might call that a sun god as a counterpart to the evil bad gods, right? Justin Holland says, worthy of power of Thor vibes. I see what you're saying. Kung Fu Panda 3 final fight vibes. I hated Kung Fu Panda's final fight. That this really stresses how everything will change. Kung Fu Panda 3's final fight. Kung Fu Panda, the original, great final battle. Kung Fu Panda 2, great final battle. Kung Fu Panda 3, terrible. This really stresses how everything will change after this fight. This really stresses how everything will change after this fight. Yes, everything will change after this fight. Keenan says, what I mean is he can't turn the rubber off. No, you're right, Marco can walk around as a human, Chopper could walk around as a reindeer, Luffy has no choice but to walk around as a rubber man, he was still rubber even underwater in Arlong Park. You're right, I think I just never thought about, but but I think a lot of Paramecias have passive abilities. Like, I think Buggy's ability was also always a passive ability. I think, yeah, I do think that in general, as far as I can tell, Marco's ability is a passive ability. He doesn't have to think about it to turn into a phoenix. But you're right, Marco's not always a phoenix. I just always figured Oda was just like a little bit kind of maybe I just figured he was like not really thinking too specifically with like what Paramecias are always on versus off. That's the best explanation I've got at the moment. Kid Smitty94 says, do you make anything of certain members of the Gorosei explaining to other members of the Gorosei, as if one of them is new or someone else gave them the fruit info? I'm going to be honest. At a certain point, I just accepted that all of the, or assumed, like I tried reading back, like this was earlier in the series though, right? So I would try to go through the Gorosei panels and be like, okay, who is who, right? Who's the leader here? I couldn't even identify like who's really the boss here. Turns out because Imu's the boss, right? I was like, I think Oda really, really went out of his way to try and make the Gorosei feel interchangeable, at least early on, so as not to give the idea that like there's a guy that's at the head of the world government or anything like that, or like it's like this weird little collective. It's kind of like in Codename Kids Next Door, the the delightful kids from down the lane, right? Look those up. That's the Gorosei. That's how I kind of viewed them. And Imu is father, right? So I don't put too much stock into which Gorosei is getting which dialogue. Now that we're approaching towards the end of the story, and it does seem like they're going to get to chat a bit more frequently, yeah, maybe it starts to become important, like who has what personality and what role they play among the rest of the Gorosei. Ramon Avila says, people freaking talk about the Devil Fruit being OP, which isn't forget that Devil Fruit won't work against Blackbeard and will still be Luffy's willpower that will win. Yeah, I mean, rubber still should, like Blackbeard's fruit should still counter every other fruit. I think hockey will be more important for Luffy beating Blackbeard at the end of the day. Rybread19 says, if Nika brings smiles, will we see Kaido smile like his flashback during his final fight? Will Kaido remain a villain after this? I don't think so. I think Kaido will remain a villain after this, because Kaido's motivations, we still have yet to find those out. I do think they're going to be more sinister than people are thinking right now. Maybe not much more. I shouldn't say that. It's not like I think the Kaido we're seeing is pretty true to who Kaido is, but I think Oda, for the moment, to set the tone of what we're getting right now, which is a sort of mutual respect type battle, he is sliding he is hiding under the rug a little bit, like a lot of the terrible things we know that Kaido has done in the past, such as enslaving the entire country of Wano for 20 years and forcing them to work for like basically no food or water. Like, let's not forget that. I mean, he's a cool guy though. If you could look past that. Don't ask Moria because he killed all of his crew. This is hold on. I got a lot to get through here. Hold on, guys. ENS says Pangea Castle. This supports the theory of the Red Line breaking up during the Battle of Marijoa at the end of One Piece. That is a good point. That is a great point. Great point. Another great point brought up this stream. I swear this stream has brought up more gold than like any other stream in the past, but probably just because of the number of people we have here. People are probably like really into like One Piece, like pouring over through the lore again and theory crafting and stuff right now, just because it's such an exciting time. Like the recent chapter prompted so much, it just makes you want to go back and read and think. Matthew Martell says, just joined, but do we all believe that Dragon has the Rain God fruit? No, I don't think that. I don't think it's the Rain God fruit. Christian Avery Griffin says, how does this change the whole Straw Hat Devil Fruit number theory? I don't think it does, because I think the Gomu Gomu no Mi is still kind of like... I've never personally super subscribed to that theory. No, I mean, it's not even something to subscribe to or not subscribe to, because like Oda himself has acknowledged it, and he does one of those things where he like tries to avoid the question, which means that like, which means that somebody is onto something, and Oda just like wants to, brush it under the table or whatever. So, I think that it doesn't really. Oh, and now we got another one. Blaze says, "Hey, Morge, since 5 and 6 are now the open numbers, who do you think will get the Rumble Fruit?" The Rumble Fruit. Wait a second. Hold on. Do we have any Japanese experts? Smoker is the Moku no Mi. What does that mean? 5-6? 6-5? Someone tell me Japanese. One of those has to be a number. Someone tell me one of those is a number. Toby Burrows says, I brought up Roger in comparison to Luffy earlier. Roger needed Garp's help to defeat Rocks. We assume that Blackbeard is the parent to Rocks. Wouldn't Luffy's new fruit need to be broken to reach the endgame? But Roger was up against Rocks' entire crew. It wasn't said that it wasn't necessarily said that Roger, like, at least from the panel we got, it looked like it was Roger and Garp versus Rocks and like his crew, right? So the implication being like, yeah, Roger needed Rocks by his side, but it sounded as though Rocks was really Roger's first enemy, like first true arch nemesis or whatever, and like that was the dynamic that was important, and not necessarily Garp and Rocks or whatever. So I don't really think that Garp necessarily. I mean, we can't really make any assumptions there or whatever, but like the assumption being that at least kind of the way that people speak of them, Roger and Prime Whitebeard, so Prime Roger and Prime Whitebeard were the strongest pirates ever. So as strong as, if not stronger than Rocks. At least that's the way that people talked. And they were referred to or whatever, Although Rocks was obviously very erased from history sort of a figure. But even characters that like know about them, they still refer to Roger as like the guy. So, we'll never get, maybe we'll get to see in a flashback or something how that battle kind of roughly shook out. But I was never under the impression that it's like Roger and Garp basically tag teaming Rocks, while the rest of the Rocks pirates just like chilled. Gray says, hey Morge, what do you think about the connection between failed smile fruits with the uncontrollable laughing and Luffy's awakening? Feels like there's more to it. I'll just say this, that it is a lot, I don't think that Luffy's being forced to laugh right now. I think he's just in a genuinely good mood. I do think that there is a lot more meaning, I think, to those fake smiles, and the smile fruits and everything like that we might be delving back into by the end of Wano. Zibatsu says, I'm really excited for after Wano. So much building to do. Maybe even Shiki will stop being a meme and do something. I don't think Shiki will ever do something important in the story. I really think Shiki was just carved out for the movie and to add a little extra lore. But after Wano, it's gonna be pretty nuts. The world will be so different soon. The part here says, hey, I know it's crazy today. Just want to let you know you skipped... Sorry, man. 4 supers from Ivan, Newt Behenort, and Mr. Crescent. I can paste once you're done with the super chat log. Whew. Sorry, you had to chat that pirate hero. Sorry about that, man. Trying to balance. Okay, let me turbo through these, and then I'll take a look at those. If you could paste their chats into the chat one more time, I'll try and take a look at them after this. Only got a few more in the log. Artem Brodsky says, Tekking 101 said that Shanks showed up to tell the Gorosei that if they come after Luffy, he will stand in their way, which would explain why they haven't. But that'd be a little funny if Shanks showed up to tell the Gorosei, hey, that Luffy's got this special fruit, but if you try and get it, I'll stand in your way, right? And then that also didn't stop the world government from coming to Wano anyway, so I don't know if that's going to be the case. Jimmy Casket says, do you still think the raid will fail? I still think yes. I want to see 1045 to see if it continues in the direction that I feel like it's continuing in. But I want to say yes at the moment. Nicholas Sealstern says, late to stream, but I wanted to try and explain Luffy's Nika power for people who don't get it. It's like the mask from 1994. The mask Luffy is a tune. Yes, it is very much like that. I've seen like a lot of people mentioning the mask as basically the best reference for this. Alexa Denovich says, so if Red Hawk is not part of the Nika powers, what do you think it is? Love your shit, by the way. I think Red Hawk's just friction. There's a lot of characters that can kind of casually use fire for no reason. I mean, even Zoro could, use a fire attack against zombie Ryuma back in the day. Like, that shit's not really new. I'm not going to assume it's fire, like a fire-based ability, till we, like, really get confirmation. Maybe it is. Maybe the Sun God thing is literal and Luffy's going to get to use fire, which I would not like, but, we'll see. So Japanese Jim says, movie Morge covering the Kung Fu Panda trilogy, lol. No, I'm not covering the Kung Fu Panda trilogy. I think, like, all of the movies in that trilogy are, like, decently good in their own right to some degree. Hold on. Jesus Christ. What happened to my chat? There's so much going on right now that I can't even tell if chat's delayed. It's just disappeared on me. Okay, we got it back up. I'm looking for Pirate Hero. Trying to see if we get a... Hello? If I don't see the Pirate Heroes comment, I'll just take a look back at, like, the 4 people that you said I missed supers from. I'm sure I can find it. Jose Larry says it was Roger and Garp tag teaming Rocks. I just don't think we ever got confirmation on that. Like, we really didn't. We just saw a panel of basically the 2 of them fighting Rox's entire crew. And it did seem more from that panel as though Rox and Roger were the 2 that were really squaring off. Okay, seeing for the Pirate Hero, he says, from Ivan back from the card shop. Do you think Hiyori is evidence for raid fail like Yamato? She seems so unfocused on to be getting the Orochi fight alongside Luffy versus Kaido to me. I think Oda did want to, because Orochi and Kaido are the 2, I'll say half and half. Like, I think there's truth to half in that, and then not so much the other half of that. I think Orochi and Kaido are supposed to be, they were the 2 main villains of Wano. Like, the Wano, the country, not the in general arc. The general arc, it's like Big Mom is probably the second biggest villain, right? But Orochi and Kaido, they're like the 2 dragons that were, oppressing Wano. So I think Oda did want to maybe sync up a little bit the end of Orochi with the end of Kaido, and that's why Hiyori's getting, or at least sync up, like, those 2 conflicts kind of, like, coming to a head. Like, those 2 villains kind of, like, at least on the verge of being taken out. He wanted to sync those 2 up, which is why we're getting focused on Hiyori right now, right? But if you want to talk character-wise, I think you could go across the board for, like, the vast majority of characters. Maybe not the vast majority of characters, but, like, you could look at a ton of characters right now and be like, clearly this character looks like they need a lot more work done and a lot more focus, right? Or what the hell happened with them? I mean, Momonosuke hasn't even picked up his sword yet. I mean, there's a lot more than that, right? But, like, you can really, really go down the list. Like, Yamato's a great example. Hiyori is a great example. Momonosuke is a great example. A lot of the Straw Hats are great examples. Hold on, I lost it. Where's Pirate Hero at? Where is it? Okay, found it. From Newt. So thanks again, Pirate Hero. My first reaction to this chapter was a bit negative, but rereading it a few times changed my mind. Yeah, I mean, I can understand that. I can understand anybody who didn't like this chapter that much, because it is such a drastic chapter, and for some people it throws a lot of things off. I still personally find it's probably my favorite chapter post-time skip. I think I've cooled down a little bit from my initial reaction, so I'm not going to be like, it's the best chapter since, like, Ace died, because I think in the wake of Ace, like, 2 chapters after Ace died, Whitebeard died, shit like that. Like there's other really really great chapters that happened throughout the end of Marineford and post Marineford and leading up to the time skip. But I definitely think that this is the best, most iconic, memorable chapter for me in the time skip or post time skip. Continuing from Newt, especially with the clarification that most ridiculous power means silliest power, not strongest. Yeah. From Behenort, Oda never cared about Luffy being just a normal guy who works hard. He has a will of D, and he's son of dragon. Guys, this is in Naruto. I'm not necessarily gonna. It's okay. One Piece never had a theme of hard work, really. Like, it never really had a theme of hard work or whatever. But it did have a strong theme of like, you have to like, you do need to do things yourself to get stronger. Like that is it. Like Ivankov literally tells that to Luffy throughout. Like Luffy's goal is to get stronger and stronger and stronger. He mentions that so many times. He mentions that during the Ace Sabo Luffy flashback, right? Like he realizes that he needs to get stronger. He needs to train. He needs to force himself to get stronger. Like that's a continuing, recurring thing. He tells that to Bluna. That's what a lot of Enies Lobby is about, right? That's what Marineford is about. There's so much throughout the story that puts it on Luffy. Like, I need to get better. I need to get stronger. So you can say that like it's not about hard work, but improvement and self-improvement and pushing yourself towards certain goals, that is definitely a huge theme, right? Now, the other things like Will of D being the son of dragon, those are to me those are like irrelevant to what I just said. Being the son of dragon doesn't automatically, like, Luffy didn't just pop out this strong, right? Like, son of dragon, that's cool. That means he's got some good genes, but like everything, we've seen Luffy's journey. We know how much of it is like it probably means that he always had the potential, right? The potential, or like that sort of iron nugget of like really strong will as a child, right? Just because he kind of inherited some of that down, but that iron little nugget of will, like Luffy had to grow that to what it is today, and that's irrelevant to basically being like, it's not like Luffy's like living off of rich daddy's money or something like that. If you want to relate that to the real world, so I don't really know. Like those are two separate things to me. It doesn't literally like having a theme of like a main character who starts really weak and then has to continually improve and push themselves and overcome failure after failure, challenge after challenge to get to the top, right? And this character really doesn't have any huge sort of leaps forward, right? It's all like grit and grind, climb for every improvement, right? That is perfectly compatible with the idea that like, okay, they also come from like a clan of people who tend to be particularly strong, but that doesn't clash with the previous idea, right? Like Luffy doesn't literally need to be a nobody who comes from nothing and like has no special connections or anything like that for that idea to still work. I think I covered everything. Is that right, Paradira? Is that everything I missed? I think that nope. I think almost there. I think it looks like I covered everything. Right? I don't see another chat from you. Oh, wait. Do you no, I see from Mr. Crescent. Do you think Orochi is actually dead, or is at least done for the rest of the raid? I don't think Orochi's dead. The nature of Orochi's fruit means that we can like literally like Oda gets so many free passes to kill Orochi. Randy Troy said that Crescent also said that Randy Troy said that him being burned alive is a nice parallel to Odin, except he will die. I think that is satisfying. Yeah, I mean it's definitely a good like this whole chapter was a good parallel to the Odin story with Luffy as Nika, laughing, smiling, etc., dancing or whatever, and Odin's story. So now Orochi dying potentially through irony of being burned to death. That would be a good way for Orochi to go out if only Orochi was just like I'm a little biased in that I still hope that Orochi's story had more significance in some way. Just because it does feel like it was a character that seemed really important and seemed to be taking up a good section of the arc, and then also not being that compelling in many ways, and also not kind of just being tiresome in a lot of ways, and never really adding much to anything. Like scope of the conflict, scale, even story wise, kind of just like a less, it's kind of like Spandam, I guess, again, but like Spandam at the very least, like Spandam felt so effective And so not effective in that he was competent, but like in terms of like he wielded an unreasonable amount of power and was able to do a lot of things and abuse that power. Whereas Orochi is kind of like continually being upstaged and not really like he just feels like this pathetic little guy that's like grimy little dude that's running around in the shadows just trying to cause a little extra trouble. Zane Blalock says Chopper's fruit gave him human-level intellect. He doesn't turn off the ability to speak or think like a human when in his normal reindeer form. Luffy's rubberness is the same case here. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of things where like Oda kind of blurs the lines of like what's the rule behind this fruit and how often it activates or whatever. And I don't think that's a huge deal. You know what I mean? Like I never really thought about that prior to this chapter. I don't think it matters too much. Samad Yunus says, do you think there's still a chance Luffy loses? Yes. I feel like people aren't putting enough respect on Kaido's name. In a 1v1, I still think Kaido wins. I definitely think Kaido still wins. I want to give it one more chapter to just see if things continue in this direction. Because then I think that like if things continue off of like what we saw of this chapter, I do think that Kaido wins. Wertio Man says, hi again, 2 questions. Do you think the smile fruits are failed attempts at a Nika fruit clone? They're all Zoan. Do you think that Gear 5th Luffy can inflate his head and be smart? I don't think the smile fruits are failed attempts at that, just because, like, the way it goes down the line, like, I don't think Caesar, Doflamingo, they're thinking, like, I don't think, like, how do I say this? My understanding was basically Caesar is the developer, Doflamingo is the distributor, Kaido is the buyer. Therefore, I think it's possible that I don't know if like Kaido himself was the mastermind behind the smile fruits necessarily, or if he just commissioned a bunch of fruits that could like Zoan fruits, artificial Zoan fruits, and then like he commissioned that from Doflamingo, who got that manufactured from Caesar. That would be how a normal like sort of you know the business transaction would go in theory, but otherwise, yeah, like my assumption is basically Kaido didn't personally mastermind the creation of these fruits. I have to go back and read that chapter where it was really explained, because we did get references to, like we saw Kaido, Orochi, and Doflamingo, or sorry, Kaido, Caesar, and Doflamingo in that chapter where smile fruits were explained. But I have to remember exactly like what, like how much of it was his personal decision. Like I want the fruits to be like this. Versus I think that like the laughing is just basically it fits into some of the themes and ideas of the arc, which is why Oda wrote it in as the side effect. Keenan says, now I'm just sitting here cackling, imagining the Gorosei all speaking to Shanks and unison like the delightful kids from down the lane. I'm telling you, man, like the Gorosei are just the delightful kids from down the lane. Just 5, they're all no good, and they all basically, you can switch around their dialogue however you want. Arthur Chekowitz says, I think introducing Gigi and Gomu Gomu no Mi equals Hito Hito no Mi gives us gushing plot holes in the story with not enough fruit set up pre-Wano to justify and call it well thought out. So I will say this, which is like we're all weekly readers for the most part, right? So for us, the Nika reveal, right, and what it was, etc. That feels like a long time back. It feels like we've been talking about this for a year, 2 years now, right? Probably a year. I think a year now, right? So for us, it feels like okay, the Nika stuff well established, etc. But the reality is, it wasn't that many chapters back that we first found out about it. It was like, I don't know, when did we learn about the Nika fruit? Probably like in the 1010s, right? The teens, 1000 teens. That's like, it's going to be somewhere between 20 and 30 chapters ago that we learned about the Nika fruit, which is really, really, really not a lot. And the Gum Gum fruit being special. So really, really not a lot. Part of that is like, it was necessary all the way through the Katakuri fight to not suggest that the Gum Gum fruit is special, because the Katakuri fight heavily emphasized the notion that Luffy's fruit is like inherently inferior to the Mochi fruit. Turns out that's not true. So I think it couldn't have really been mentioned earlier, but maybe towards the beginning of the Wano arc, something along those lines. But at the same time, I think like Oda had to play this little game of like, if you mention it in the beginning of the Wano arc, it probably takes away some of the hype or potential excitement of like, oh, how's Luffy going to beat Kaido? How's Luffy going to fight Kaido, right? If we already know from the beginning of the arc that like, it's probably going to be the Gum Gum fruit being something special versus teasing it along the way as the battles are going on and like other stuff is going on to distract us, etc., till eventually getting to that reveal. So I'll say this. I think plot-wise, logically, it would have been better overall and felt more seamless and intentional if Oda had talked this shit up, dropped hints. Not like little oh, look at Luffy fucking dancing by the campfire type hints. That's not a fucking hint, okay? That's a hint in retrospect when we finally get the silhouette of Nika, but it suggests nothing in real time that like Luffy is anything special during that campfire scene, right, when we first read it. So Oda actually dropping some hints as to the specialness of Luffy's fruit does cover up the plot holes. It becomes less hype or exciting. Things feel a little more predictable when we're actually reading than the arc where the fruit is awakening is going to be revealed. It's a bit of a trade-off there. I think as long as Oda can, like, if he has some ways to acknowledge like the plot holes that seem to come out of this, I'm kind of just giving him. It feels weird to say giving him a pass. Like, I obviously doesn't need my pass or whatever. I'm saying like I'm personally mentally just like being like, okay, forget this chapter, amazing. I know that there's plot holes or whatever that come out of this, but I'm just going to mentally try and forget about that for right now and then just trust that Oda will address it at some point later. And I hope he does. That would make it sit more right with me personally. Drek the Drek says, between Law and now Luffy, Chopper sure is obsolete and redundant. Now nothing of value would be lost if he died and Law joined. Dude, poor Chopper, man. Yeah, it's not being the only Zoan anymore, and not even being not the only Zoan. He's not even the only Hito Hito no Mi model here, and he's literally just the garbage vanilla generic brand, whereas Luffy's like the VIP special premium brand. Luffy's fruit is just strictly better than Chopper's fruit, which is hilarious. Kushin Mukherjee, sure to ask a terrible question here. He says, important Hito Hito no Mi question. Since Chopper is an animal with a human fruit, will he always be committing bestiality no matter what? Oh my god. No, not if he does it with a mink. I think if he does it with a mink, he's in the clear. Battlestar says, Oda going with the narrative style of power-up that growth/maturity shouldn't be serious, plus correlation that Luffy and Oden looking joyful to free Wano. I don't know if that's exactly what Oda is saying, because Luffy has had to get more serious in the past, like Enies Lobby and everything like that. So, like, I'm not saying he shouldn't be more serious, and we also don't know if Luffy succeeds here. So I think that's very important. And again, I'll reiterate it here. I don't think Luffy succeeds here. So I don't think Luffy's just going to go from like, oh, this is so easy, I'm at my peak, I feel so good, etc. Let me kick Kaido's ass, to actually kicking Kaido's ass. I don't think that's the case. We'll wait and see. Matthew Martell says, I think if we got a flashback of Roger, Garp versus Rocks, that'd be more sick if Rayleigh and Bogard were involved. I mean, I'm sure that Rayleigh was a big part of, like, Rocks' crew was so ridiculously stacked that you could never write a realistic scenario where Roger's crew on its own beat them, right? I mean, like, they had Big Mom, Whitebeard, Kaido, Shiki, like all these names. Like, Rocks' crew is the most stacked crew ever, right? So you have to add the fact that Garp is there as well. But that doesn't mean that, like, Roger and Garp tag team Rocks while the rest of Roger's crew beat the rest of Rocks' crew, because that also then, that still seems unbalanced. So I feel like it was a more mix and match spread. David Magana says, do you think Luffy will see the same viewpoint as Roger and Garp towards the Celestial Dragons? I'm interested in why they were saving them from Rocks. I don't know. That is probably the most interesting thing that happened from... Sorry, car went by, that was really loud. The biggest question mark that came out of the God Valley incident, I do believe that we will get a glimpse of the God Valley incident, so I'm not going to speak on my theory for that till then. Like, I don't think I have a strong theory on that, so I'm not just going to try and make one up. Jerry Coleman says, hey, Moore, do you think the final arc will be longer than the Wano arc? It depends, because, like, okay, the way I'd say it is basically, like, depends how Oda segments out the arc, because there's a possibility that the final war arc, right, we all think, a lot of us think that Elbaf is up next, right? What does the final war arc mean? Like, is Elbaf and traveling to Laughdale and stuff, is that all going to be part of the same flow of one big arc, or at least one saga, right? If that's the case, sure, I could see it all being longer than Wano. But if it is more segmented out, so maybe Elbaf first, then maybe Laughdale or something, and then by that point the final war is beginning, I would think no, it would not be longer than Wano, largely because with the final war, you would have, by that point in time, you would have everything set, right? You're not introducing, like, think about how much of Wano early on is we have to learn lore about the country, you have to get introduced to individual characters and relationships and, like, little running plot lines and stuff like that, and, like, so much time is spent establishing the things about Wano, right? With the world, right, like, all of the major players, we are going to get backstories, I assume, about, like, you know, Dragon, Blackbeard, etc., but, like, you're not introducing things from scratch. The final war is basically going to be it's just tying everything together. Whereas Wano, it had more of like you got to build up a lot, right? Build up a lot, establish a lot of new. Final war is basically flesh out all the last things you want to flesh out, and then just bring everything together. So I'm not saying it'll be short, but I don't think it'll be as long as the Wano arc because there should just be actually less to do there. Yeah, Studio says, remember the champ wears the afro or the afro wears the champ bit. Maybe Oda foresaw fan debates on the true nature of the fruit, questioning if it's Luffy that makes it strong or the other way around. I don't know if that was... I can't chalk up everything to brilliant Goda foreshadowing. I don't know if that's the case. I think that was a gag moment. KK says, hi, do you think after this giant lore dump arc we will get hints at other characters like Vegapunk key to the One Piece world? Vegapunk, I think I still would not be surprised if Vegapunk, more secrets about him are revealed this arc, or even if he somehow makes an appearance this arc. It just feels like he's been talked about so much right now. Not to mention, actually that's kind of a weak reason. I'll get into that maybe another time. Arape16 says Luffy's new fighting style reminds me of Kid Buu. That's kind of true. Maybe Oda I know Oda's a big Dragon Ball fan. Maybe he watched all of Dragon Ball and was just like, I really like out of all these characters, Buu's fighting style is my favorite. I'll write my hero around that. Luke Ryomi says it's not the strength of the fruit, it's the way it sparks joy in others, paired with the right user, the ultimate threat to this world in darkness. Yeah, I mean, I'm of the opinion that one, it was probably Joy Boy's fruit, so symbolically it's just bad. The world government don't want any of Joy Boy's, what made Joy Boy passed down, right? They don't want that. Two, it's just the unique nature of the fruit more than anything. It stands for freedom. It has more of a free will than other fruits. It sounds like it's the most ridiculous power in the world, so its ability really does stand out. But I don't think it's like a broken fruit. I do think that in the right hands, it can be really, really strong, it seems like. But it also just seems like more like what it represents that threatens the world government, right? It's Joy Boy's legacy. It's freedom incarnate, right? It's it's the idea behind it that they don't want to reawaken what was once there in the past. The pirate here says, I thought it was the fruit itself making him laugh more, but if he's just happy from the energy boost, then I do think it's dope. Sorry, no question, lol. No worries, man. Thanks for holding it down so well. I mean, I just read it as he's happy from the energy boost. I did not think, maybe I'm wrong, maybe he can't stop laughing while he's using this fruit, but I think he's just in a really good mood. Again, I would say the simplest callback is to Thriller Bark, where Luffy was down and out, right, for basically the entire Kuma section, completely exhausted, done. Then he wakes up at the end of it. Zoro's taken all his pain, so Luffy's feeling very light, very happy, etc. He's excitedly laughing, dancing, etc. Milo Cake says, do you think Vegapunk wanted to recreate the will in the fruit, making Momo's failure? Making Momo's a failure. Oh, I see. Do you think the world government wanted him to recreate Luffy's fruit? I just don't know, because I think that the world government doesn't want another Gomu Gomu no Mi is my guess, and I think also that Momo's fruit, it's clearly a dragon fruit, right? So I don't think he was working on Luffy's fruit and ended up with a dragon fruit. Enter Name says, Wano theory you're most glad didn't happen. Forgotten at this point because we're so far in the arc and so many things have come and gone. I think there was a theory that let me think. There were certain things it was probably gonna be some sort of matchup. People were throwing around certain matchups that didn't seem good to me or something like that. That was a thing for a while. I also think you know what? I'll say this. One of the biggest things, which is for the longest time in the early parts of Wano, people were convinced that there was no way that Luffy would ever be able to fight Kaido one-on-one by the end of this arc. People were convinced that Luffy versus Kaido is never going to be a 1v1, except for maybe a chapter when Kaido's really weakened or something. That was by far the consensus, and you can go back and watch all videos, discussions, reveries, whatever. Everybody's convinced that Luffy's not going to be there by the end of Wano. In fact, if you go back, most people, especially, it makes sense. Luffy at the beginning of Wano, he got one-shotted by Kaido. He's training in Udon. He doesn't really get... He gets some advanced armament haki, but Kaido seems so far off. Kaido and Big Mom are splitting the sky one island over, right? So Luffy seems way far off, right? By the time Luffy left for Onigashima, everyone was pretty certain that Luffy is way closer to like first mate level than he is to like a Yonko level. So a lot of consensus was like, you know what, by the end of the arc, maybe Luffy's like, maybe he'll be maybe as strong as one of like maybe comparable to an admiral, but definitely not equal to Kaido or something like that. Nowadays, I know that a lot of people have arguments that some of the admirals are stronger than Kaido or whatever, but I'm saying at the time, right? At the time, Kaido was thought to be like, no way Luffy touches him on his own. So the general consensus was that it's going to be a really, really big team effort. I always thought that was garbage. I was just like, that makes no sense. I said for the longest time that Luffy should be fighting Kaido 1v1 by the end of the arc. And yeah, Luffy's really far off, right, at the beginning of the arc. But by the end of the arc, like, Wano's probably going to be a long arc. He'll get there by the end of the arc, right? Not saying Kaido hasn't, like, not saying that it'll be a pure 1v1. Like, Kaido and Luffy have both taken damage from different sources. But at the end of the day, like, Luffy can clearly do it 1v1 if it really comes down to it, and at least be equal to Kaido, on equal footing. Whether you think he could win solo without any of Kaido's prior injuries or whatever, if you even think Kaido's that injured, which I personally don't, and Luffy's definitely taken more injuries than Kaido over the course of this battle, then yeah, that's fair. But like, he's clearly, the majority of the Kaido battle is Luffy and Kaido just against each other. So I think that's really big because I think it like goes against the whole idea of what Luffy is supposed to represent in this story if the final battle does not involve everything coming down onto his shoulders, because that's who he is, right? So that's a big part. Arthur Chekowitz says, I also didn't like inventing a lore-exclusive sun god with rubber powers on the go. It seriously feels forced to just fit the narrative to me. Yeah, I mean, I've talked about this already, but like, Oda could have talked about this guy earlier. It just basically, it's so hard to do it in a way that doesn't spoil what, like, doesn't tip off to readers that, oh, Luffy's gonna end up getting, like maybe Luffy ends up being this guy, right? Like, as soon as you talk about the gum fruit being special earlier on, right? As soon as you talk about Nika being special, like a thing earlier on, especially if he has rubber powers or whatever, Sun God, the mentions are there in Skypiea. It's just the idea that it's this guy named Nika, right? And he has rubber powers. All of that's very new, and I can see why it could feel manufactured for it to all have happened literally in the last 30 chapters, right? 30 chapters is not a long time. It's weird. Like, I think there's enough to say that Oda was definitely thinking about this for a long, long time, and I talk about that more in length in tomorrow's video, where I do think he's been thinking about this for a long time. But maybe the ways that it was dropped into the plot and like the plot holes that it introduces are not necessarily, they leave something to be desired. So yeah, I don't think it's perfect, but I definitely think it was just a really exciting development to read, and honestly, I'm cool with it. I really like it. Just don't know if there's any way for me to I can acknowledge the things that are, really questionable about it and all that, but at the end of the day, like, come on, I like it. Christian Barraza says, with Wano serving as the inversion of Thriller Bark and Gear 5th paralleling Nightmare Luffy, what other inversions of Thriller Bark do you see happening? I've said this before, I've dropped a video on it. I see the Strats fighting Kaido by the end of all of this. Definitely see the Strats fighting Kaido by the end of all this. You're telling me the fucking 9 scabbards, the lamest shit 9 scabbards, gotta go at Kaido, right? And the Straw Hats, who are supposed to be basically, they're supposed to be everything to Luffy that the scabbards were not able to be to Oden. And the Strats have shown in the past, like the Oars battle, for example, that when it comes down to it, they can fight a great foe in Luffy's place when necessary, right? While stalling for Luffy, right? You're telling me that the Strats are not going to get to fight Kaido? I definitely believe that the Strats get to go against Kaido before the end of this. I think Luffy, I mean, again, it's ultimately going to come down to Luffy versus Kaido 1v1. But I can see the Strats having a scenario where they have to stall Kaido for a period of time, right? No matter what, every arc has to come down to Luffy versus the main villain 1v1 because that is Luffy's role in the story. It's unquestionably his role in the story. He has to be that guy, that he is the guy that takes down the guy that nobody else can take down at the end of the day. That is Luffy's role. It's spelled out clear as day. He gives a whole speech on it in Arlong Park, right? And he reiterates that speech to Blueno at the start of any battle, at the start of their battle in Enies Lobby, right? So that is just who Luffy is. So it always has to come down to Luffy versus the bad guy 1v1. But other people can put in work beforehand and like help protect Luffy beforehand. And I think that's where the Strats versus Kaido could come in. Captain Face says, wanted Zoan awakenings in Wano. Oh, sorry, Christian Braza. The ending part of your question was Kuma-like figure happening or Zora's Nothing Happened 2.0. I don't know if we can ever quite get a moment like Zora's Nothing Happened 2.0 because it's just hard to imagine what it would be. It was such a perfect moment, that fit that point in time. It's just like a spark of creativity that spawned a great, memorable scene. A Kuma-like figure appearing. I think that the end of Wano, no matter how it goes, will be like a very clean victory in my opinion, just because that's what this arc seems to warrant. So I don't think it'll end with like some bad guy that like puts a damper on the Kaido defeat or anything like that. Captain Face says wanted Zoan awakenings in Wano. Luffy works. Lol. I think we'll get to see more than just Luffy by the end of it, but it's funny that Luffy was the first Zoan awakening that we saw. I think first real time awakening that we've ever seen in the story of a character getting awakening the first time. Sabo Archipelago. Thanks. Any thoughts on Elbaf using the themes of Norse gods as a way to fit in plot elements of Luffy mastering his awakening? I don't know if you guys heard that. That was a very loud car. You're saying like, I'm not sure exactly what you're saying, but like you're saying that it'll be a place that Luffy masters his awakening and maybe Norse mythology or some ideas from that play into it a little bit. I don't think Elbaf is a place for improvement. I've said this before in my Elbaf will be Shanks' arc video way back when, but I've always seen Elbaf as basically a proving grounds, a testing grounds, right? So the Strahds, in my opinion, will be rolled up close to as strong as, as strong as they're like same strength that they'll probably be by the end of the arc. I think like that will be a place for them to prove that we are at this point in the story, we are as strong as or stronger than Shanks and his crew. So I don't think it's a place for Luffy to learn and improve and things like that. I think it's a place for him to be like, this is how strong I am now. This is how strong my crew is now. Let's see who's better. Because you do need that. Like, you don't want, like, in general, like, especially throughout One Piece, which is, you can't have characters getting stronger literally every arc and going through something really dramatic and, like, game-changing every arc where they're leveling up hard every arc. It just doesn't work that well because if you look throughout One Piece, like, there's long gaps where Luffy's not really improving, right? Because the arcs that are really dramatic are the ones where, like, the character finally hits a wall and is forced to really improve and go through something and level up, right? So Whole Cake Island and Wano, that's one of the few rare, and it's all part of one saga, that's one of the few rare instances where Luffy is having to go trial after trial and grow and grow and grow. I do think that after Wano, because Wano is kind of the climax to all of that, I do think that the next arc won't necessarily be an arc where Luffy has to improve yet again. I think Luffy's next big step forward will likely be the final stage of his journey, which is the final war. Let's see. Captain Face says, I was wondering how Luffy would be able to get back up with an awakening since it drains you, but Luffy being a Zoan makes sense for the health boost. Yes, which was established back in, Impel Down with the Awakened Zone guards. I wish it was referenced again here just so it's more clear to people. No, we covered this. Ivan back from the card shop says, what if Shiki is brought back and is actually hyped up and ends up getting Blue Note just to troll people who think he's strong? I don't think Oda's going to bring back Shiki into the main story. I think it'll just be bizarre to have, like, this whole movie character who's really mean, like, it would, like, I know that Shiki's obviously canon to the One Piece lore and everything like that, but it's just weird because he was such a big deal for a period of time outside of the story as a movie. So having him come back into the story, it just, I don't know, it just feels weird to me. It feels weird to me. I think Oda's done with that character, right? He served his purpose. Kuroneko says, SBS 20, a reader asked Oda what would happen if a human ate the Hito Hitonomi. Oda answered that the one who did it will find himself. What do you think about that regarding 1044? I think he was referring to Chopper's fruit in that case. I don't think Oda was necessarily thinking of, like, man, Luffy's future fruit, that would be him finding himself, and that's, like, this little tidbit that I'm dropping here. I do think Oda was literally making a joke about Chopper's fruit that, like, if a human eats the human fruit, then, like, they'll find inner, what's the word? There's a word for, like, just understanding everything about yourself. I forget what the word is. It'll come to me at some point. The sun god was not inner peace. It's a different word. Ramon Avila says the sun god was introduced at Skypiea, like hockey was called mantra. Nika's just another name. People need to chill. We will get more info. Yeah, I think specific like the sun god was referenced in Skypiea frequently. I did mention that, but just the amount of info that we got there was like a far cry from what it turned out to in the end. You know what I mean? Oh, there's a lot of power scaling things going on in the chat. As now it's loading up for me again. See a lot of Garp versus current Luffy. I'm seeing Roger versus Prime Zebek. I'm seeing Kaido and Big Mom being called not that strong. Guess I prompted a lot of power scaling. Enlightenment. That's the word. Enlightenment. Thank you. Enlightenment. Don't know why I couldn't. Brain. Yeah. Enlightenment. Ekumify says, what's your native language? Is it English? I would be embarrassed to say English is my native language after I couldn't remember the word enlightenment. But unfortunately it is. English is my main language. Hindi I used to speak, I mean, like when I was younger, my Hindi was sharp, but nowadays it's like, I could barely get by. If I could get by in India if I was just dropped there without a map. But it would be rough and I'd be scared. My Hindi's fine. It's like, I can get by. Also, they made me learn Spanish in school for 6 years, and that fucking sucked. 5 years? So I learned Spanish from 7th through 11th grade, and then 12th grade I didn't have to take it anymore. That's nice. I do think it's good that schools make you learn a language. I just think that it's the way they do it is so bad. Like, it's actually bizarre how bad schools are at making you learn a language, because like they do it in the most weird way possible, where like it's like time to learn the conjugations of like this verb for the next week or something. It's like that's not how people fucking learn languages. That doesn't make any sense. Like I couldn't do that with Hindi, but my Hindi is probably better than people who've taken 4 years of Spanish. All right, where are we at? Myron12 says, what if Wano's special precisely because it's the only place Joy Boy can awaken? Also correlates to Japan's Land of the Rising Sun theme. Land of the Rising Sun, that's something I did not pick up on till the stream. Somebody brought it up. Great idea. Great point. The rest of it is, like, I got a juicy video potentially coming after 10:45. I need to read 10:45 first to feel like things are potentially going the same direction that I think they are. But I do have a juicy video I want to drop after 10:45. Juicy video I want to drop after 10:45. Just need one more chapter to feel like, because it's possible next chapter just contradicts everything that I'm thinking. Bobby the Blizzard says, thoughts on the final panel of 10:43. As far as I can tell, we still don't know why he was melting, but I haven't seen anybody talking about it. Why he was melting? It just seems like that's how the awakening, like how the transformation takes shape. You know, that's how awakening visually occurs. At least with the rubber fruit, perhaps. Maybe it's not that way for all fruits, but it seems like that's how it is for Luffy's fruit. I get the sense we didn't really need to see more of it to really kind of confirm what was going on. Like, we all understood. Okay. Firedeer says, Miss Super Chat from Thomas Cass. To add to my theory, Big Mom and Kaido directly mentioned the ancient weapons this arc. Joyboy broke his promise to the first Poseidon. Luffy will save Tama. That is interesting. There's just so much that can be, like, suggested in Wait, TCB's here? TCB's here? What's TCB's? TCB, I had to ban you dropping hints. I said no spoilers. Even just final argument for the raid failing, says Drusser. No, I have to label it something else. It can't be the final argument for the raid failing. I have to label it something else. Otherwise, it's just embarrassing. Thomas Gaz is saying some interesting stuff. TCB, okay, it's coming out Friday. It's not coming out Thursday again. I have gotten used to it coming out Thursday. Just because, I guess just because of, like, last week. Because I think I prefer Thursday releases now. It makes it easier. I can just record it at night and then, like, yeah, if I record it at night, then I can just release it in the morning, and that's nicer, at least for me. And I can kind of chill Friday morning a bit. Because let me tell you, it's not as fun when you have to wake up in the morning to not wake up in like it's not as fun when like reading the chapter becomes like the first thing you have to do as work in the morning. You know what I mean? Because like um, I used to prefer like back before I was a One Piece YouTuber, I could just read the chapter at my leisure, however I wanted. Don't have to think about a review or anything like that. Now that it's at night, it's nicer because I'm already in the flow of the workday. You know, like last Thursday, the way it released at night, I was in the flow of the workday. Okay, chapter came out. Cool. That's awesome. Whoa, chapter was amazing. Loved it. All right, and now I have time and stuff to think about what I want to say, etc. TCB says it will be Thursday evening / night. Yes, I do like that better. If that could somehow be the norm, that would be great because it makes Friday so much more like I'm okay with just powering through and working late through Thursday to to get Friday a little easier. No. Did somebody say we're in Act 4 now, Naito? Somebody ban people. What's happening now? Somebody ban people. I don't want any spoilers. I don't want any spoilers. People start being banned. I don't know. I've never requested people to be banned before, but people are saying some stuff about like I need silence. I need silence. Okay. All right, no spoilers are out. Okay. 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 All right. The pirate here says if that is a spoiler, Morge just spoiled me by reading it. Oh no, Limo. All right, there's no spoilers. We're all good. No spoilers. We're all good. They're lying. Lol. All right. All right. All right. I was about to. I don't know. I don't have a lot of ability. Like, I guess I could. I guess I could request someone trust it. No, I don't know. There's no way. TCB is the only person I can trust, and TCB said spoilers are not out, so I'm just gonna believe that. Honestly, so no spoilers out there, just faking stuff. Honestly, like the ability to fool people right now is so crazy because like the craziness of the last 2 chapters just means that like you could say anything and it's believable. You could be like Enma wakes up, takes human form, and speaks to Zoro, and I'd just be like, that seems doable. You could be like, Dragon shows up. I don't know. There's things that you could say, and I'd just believe it. Jefferson Estevam says ban hammer all. Yeah, and then I just talked to myself for the rest of the stream. Joel says next chapter is Gear 6th. Yep, that seems doable. It seems right. I could believe that. Anuj Agrawal says, all right, everyone, lay off at TCB a little. Don't overwhelm them with ats. Yeah, leave TCB alone. we need TCB in perfect shape to translate this next chapter. Herlock Shom says maybe Zoro's revealed as a D. I mean, there's an interesting theory out there that Wano itself is like the ancient kingdom or part of the ancient kingdom. In which case, like everybody in Wano is a descendant of the clan of D, the D tribe. In which case, yeah, Zoro would probably be from the D tribe if that's the case, which I wouldn't necessarily like, but whatever. Part here says, from the black man who laughs, Ryuma Blackblade revives Zoro like Luffy's fruit did. Let's hope not. I mean, no, because Ryuma's Shisui's not here, so I think we're fine with that. Manish Chaudhary says, do you think it's kind of convenient writing? To now we have seen people work blood and sweat to reach the current power level, and now we just have Luffy gain an overpowered stage. I need to see whether Luffy wins here or not. That's a big part of it, and then I'll reevaluate. Because you guys know my thoughts are all colored from the way that I think things play out, right? So a lot depends on if Luffy wins here or not, and I have to reevaluate from there. I see the criticisms people are saying of this. I think right now, I read this chapter, I felt like it brought out the most One Piece fanboyness in me in like years. Basically, I just thought it was really cool seeing like anything like any rigid thoughts in my brain about like was this set up, was this like plot holes, blah blah blah. All of this stuff was like just went out the window. I was just like I thought it was so cool. So, and you guys know that like I sometimes I have particularly, I guess, harsher opinions on certain aspects of things that develop, right? But I just enjoyed this, and I was able to just enjoy this very freely and like in isolation. I think I will always love, like, no matter what happens in the future, I think I will always look back and love this chapter, right? Now the whole sequence of events, right? Like how Luffy got here, what it means for him going forward, right? Like does it change his victories in the future? Was his getting this power, like how earned did it feel? How well was it set up in the plot, etc.? I might look back on that in different lens once I reread the whole arc, etc. But I'm saying this chapter in isolation, I think I'll always love this chapter and the memories of this chapter. Ivan back from the card shop says, turns out next chapter Kaido is Blue Node. Hello Places, this is my peak. This line got me so hype. Yeah, I mean, when do you hear Luffy talking like that? That's pretty crazy. 916 16 says, even the flow of chapter felt like old One Piece. Don't know what you mean by that exactly. I mean, the flow of many Wano chapters, because it's splitting up over so many different, it has to jump around from so many different things. It's kind of like, yeah, I get it. Like, the flow of this chapter just like a little slower or whatever. I mean, I think all of the best chapters of the raid and Wano in general have been when Oda sits down and focuses on a single scene rather than just jumping around for multiple things. And that was the case for this for the most part. We did have to get Hiyori Orochi, which I didn't love. It's complicated. I didn't love it like in terms of jumping away from the moment, but I liked it in how Oda juxtaposed the Odin stuff with the Luffy stuff. All right, guys. I do have some food I got to pick up. I'm going to end the stream in 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Yeah, people are talking about the clouds changing to look like Luffy's fruit. I don't think that's the case. Haven't the clouds always looked like that? Like, I saw some people tweeting about that. Like, there is that meme that I've seen. Like, there's memes that people make about One Piece fans. Like, it'll just be like 2 random panels and like a bunch of stuff circled and be like, One Piece fans be like Goda or whatever, and it's just like 2 random panels that like are circled with a bunch of random things that aren't actually similarities. So I think that might be another case for that. Thanks, Bart Hero. Super chat from Miguel Miranda. If Luffy beats Kaido easily, then Big Mom's fighting Luffy is not really going to be any better. So team battle to beat Kaido makes sense. I mean, I don't think that Luffy beats Kaido. I mean, you guys know I don't think Luffy beats Kaido here. And I do think that Luffy ultimately beats Big Mom. I think that no matter what, Big Mom goes down in the story permanently before Kaido does. About Alberto Jr. says, Morge, have you heard about Rubber Hose animation? It's key to awakening. Yeah, that's like the old school style animation. A lot of people complained, I remember, because like Cuphead, the anime, isn't using Rubber Hose. Not anime. Cuphead, the animation isn't using Rubber Hose animation because it's too hard. It's hard to do. Mr. Crescent says, do you think Gear 5th, and guarantee the One Piece anime doesn't fucking use Rubber Hose animation when it comes time for it. Mr. Crescent says, do you think Gear 5th will have a lot more drawbacks than the other gears and that he might have a shorter time limit to use it? I think Gear 5th has to come with some sort of a drawback just because otherwise it's like it's too like all of the other gears, gear second, maybe not gear third, gear second, gear fourth, they have drawbacks. Gear fourth, time limit. Gear second, technically bad for your body, right? Bad for your heart, your lifespan. Um, there's no reason not to use gear fifth every time, like just constantly if there's no drawbacks to it. So I'm sure it has some drawback. I mean, it might just be a general drawback related to Zoan awakenings. Like Kaido hasn't used his awakening yet. Sworn brother says, if Roger was the strongest with no devil fruit, even though Whitebeard was called the strongest, never Roger, doesn't that make devil fruits useless? No, it just makes Roger dope. It's just a more testament to Roger. I mean, I don't think you can look at the latest chapter and be like, man, devil fruits are useless. I think at the end of the day, like Luffy, in terms of straight combat, like hockey, etc., will probably be just as strong as Roger, but he's got the devil fruit and the devil fruit creativity and all of that to go with it, so it'll be like the step beyond, in my opinion. Sarab Wagmer says, Luffy always said Gomu Gomu no. Oda likes wordplay. No, that's, I think that's just how you, I don't think the no always meant that it's not the Gomu Gomu no Mi. Divine Air said Gear 3rd had Luffy shrinking. True. I think that one's just so clearly gone away that I don't think about it anymore. Gear 2nd, whether it still shortens his lifespan, I don't know when we'll find out. Might not. Milo Cake says, I want the drawback of Gear 5th to be Luffy losing his Devil Fruit temporarily. That's an interesting idea. Very interesting idea. But I don't think that would happen. Marmar says, Morge, I tagged you in a tweet. Check it out when you can. All right, will do. Drusser says, least insane Uteron fan. Don't know what that means. Don't know who you're referring to there. Oh, Pirate Hero said, BTW, anyone check out Sanji's observation haki literally woke him from slumber. Lol. Yeah, I mean, like, Sanji's observation haki, I wish it got, like, a little bit more focus in the story, because he's supposed to be, that's supposed to be his thing. And we get it in little bits and pieces, right? Like, who can forget the Jelly Bean incident, right? No one, because Sanji fans will never let you forget the Jelly Bean incident, right? You will never forget the time that Katakuri flicked a Jelly Bean at Sanji and then Sanji dodged it, okay? It is sad, but that is like a top 3 Sanji moment post-time skip. It's just the way it is, because it's one of the few cases where we can point to and be like, look, Sanji, observation haki specialist, this seems like something an observation haki specialist would do. But I like little touches like this where we saw this chapter that, you know, Sanji's observation haki, like, he's, like, why is he able to notice this stuff whereas all the other Straw Hats aren't? The Straw is obviously knocked out, but I'm just saying, like, it's a good touch that Sanji is able, like, even in the unconscious state that he was previously in, he's picking it up, and he's, like, much further away from the action than, you know, Kid, Law, etc. So it's a little bit interesting. The Black Man Who Laughs says, Gear 5th drawback will be bipolar. He gets sad after use. I mean, if he loses, I could definitely see that. Hello Play says nothing about it hints or even connects to being a Zoan. Yeah, look, you can... I'm not trying to, like, say that everything about this is, like, perfect. It's not, right? It's not. I'm cool with Luffy being a Zoan now. You know, I was very used to the idea that Luffy's a Paramecia. To me, as I said before, he's always been, like, the staple model Paramecia in my mind. But I can get behind him being a Zoan. Gotten used to it. Mentally, I think. Hito, yes. LMAO, this is waifu philosophy. All right. No more supers. I think I'm going to answer 2 more normal questions, then I'm going to head out. Thanks for everybody showing up. This was a crazy stream. Crazy. I don't know the next time that we'll have, like, almost 3K people in here for a post-chapter discussion. Joshua Scott says, NBA MVP this year. Jokic, but that's because I got a bet riding on it. If I didn't, then, like, objectively is the NBA MVP. I think they're on. I guess Embiid, but the Sixers have also been, like, somewhat more disappointing recently for some reason. Like, the Sixers have been underwhelming, I guess, a little bit, because they got the hot start when James Harden joined them, and then it kind of just died down a little bit. And I think I just see, like, especially, like, that Nets game was really damning, I think, against Embiid, because it's just, like, when it comes down to it, and it's just, like, you don't look like the MVP when you're playing against the Nets, right? Like, Yeah, Jose. Yeah. Bo Park says, "How do you feel about Luffy's fruit being special?" I talked about this uh, at length, but like I'm cool with it being special as long as it's not like a broken ability. It's more symbolic, what the fruit represents, what it has represented over time, things like that. Yeah, I think it could be Jokic. It's just like, man, if I had my max bias, I'd say LeBron, but no one would agree with me, and no one. It's just not logical. I mean, I still think it's LeBron. I think LeBron should get it every year. Yeah, yeah. Next question won't be basketball related. All right. One more question, not basketball related. Let's take a look. Yeah, Sanji hitting Oven is actually a really cool moment. That I think just didn't get credit at the time. I'm trying to find a question that's like interesting. Not that the questions I'm ignoring aren't interesting. They're just not end the stream on it type questions. Jose Larios says plays no defense though. LMAO. Defense matters so much less than people pretend in the NBA. So much less. Like people just bring up defense when they want to like make their case. Like not. I mean that's a stupid thing to say, but like suddenly like look, like you can be the best defender in the league. What's more valuable? Like the best defense in the league, so think like Rudy Gobert, Draymond Green type, versus just being a broken fucking offensive weapon, right? Like Kevin Durant could play no defense and still be like a top 3 player in the league. Steph Curry is terrible at defense and is still like a top 5 player in the league. Like offense matters so much infinitely more than defense in the NBA. So much infinitely more. Defense, it's like it's important, but like it's nowhere near as important. It's when it comes to centers, I can see the argument. Like if you're a bad defensive center, just because like then nobody's really holding it down there. But it's just different. J Full says, "Love you, Morge. Thanks, appreciate it." Arbor Numani says Morge is a casual LMAO. No, it's the other way around. This is the steps, right? So casuals are like only offense matters, right? Then you get to a point where it's like defense wins championships, and that's when you think you're a pro. Then you get to a further point, and you're like, at the end of the day, the most important skill in the NBA by far, is being able to get buckets when nobody else can get buckets. All right, what's a real question to end this on? I'll talk about this. Nicholas Grassi says, "Does Luffy ever think to himself?" He has walked us through his thought process like once. I think when he was on Amazon Lily and he was trying to. He does this a couple times where he'll talk out loud and figure something out loud. But Oda never likes to. He never gives us an inner monologue in Luffy's head because Luffy is a character that's all about like actions speaking louder than words and unpredictability, right? So you can tell a lot about Luffy by what he's like doing, how he's acting, right? Like his demeanor, etc. Luffy has a lot of kind of silent panels where like you just pan to Luffy and you know that he's got like something going on. You can tell exactly how he feels about the current situation, even though he's not going to say it. And I think that's really important for his character, right? Like for Luffy's character to Oda likes writing Luffy as basically like he is certain ideals like incarnate in a human being, right? So he doesn't want to humanize Luffy too much. You don't want to like walk through like all of Luffy's like inner monologues, like thought processes, like the personal conflicts he thinks about, because the idea is that Luffy needs to be very decisive. Like when it comes to certain things, right? Like, uh, Luffy needs to be very decisive and clear and no hesitation in what he knows is right, right? Like punching the Celestial Dragon, right? Shooting down the world government's flag. Those moments are more powerful because we so rarely know what's going on inside Luffy's head, and that's what makes it so much more powerful because like he'll suddenly do something really grand and bold, but it makes so much sense because it's him, right? And you know that, like, okay, naturally he's going to do that. Of course he's going to do that. All right. I think that's pretty good. Sorry, just checking what they, seeing people get mad about my basketball takes, even though they're correct. Uh, where are we at? I think we're all good. I think we're all good. The last thing I'll just say is Arbor Numani says Morge exposed himself as a casual when he said Steph is terrible on defense. Steph is at worst an average defender. No, you just exposed yourself as a Warriors fanboy. All right, like the classic go-to thing with Steph is like, you know, Steph has actually improved on defense this year. He's like above average at defense at his position. It's just like, I'll believe it when I don't see teams fucking switching on him when it comes down to